Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Fell in Love with Serafall Leviathan movie. Before we start, please go support marioiale for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Chapter 1. Serafall Leviathan hummed cheerfully as she entered the clearing in the massive forest she was exploring. Opening her glowing purple eyes, Serafall looked around, her pigtails swaying as she looked back and forth, making sure she wasn't being followed. Humming, the petite, buxom girl in a pink magical girl outfit smiled brightly when she saw she wasn't being followed. It was bad enough that she was actually famous for her status as a Mao and her famous magical girl TV show, Leviathan. Coming to this clearing was the best way to clear her mind, get some privacy, even though she enjoyed the attention, and, of course, relax. Plus, this section of forest she found in the human world was her super-secret special place. No one knew about it except for one person. However, it saddened her that the only other person who knew about this place was stuck here. Smiling brightly as she cheered up, the pink-clad girl held her hand out in front of her, palm open. A moment later, a large barrier blocked her, but Serafall wasn't a Mao for nothing. Moving her hand in a decompressing motion, the barrier opened, and the girl smiled as she stepped inside. The hole she made closed moments later. As she walked through the barrier, the entire scene changed from a large forest into a beautiful clearing complete with a large lake. Cherry blossoms covered the air as the clearing had large sakura trees along the edges of the lake. In the middle of the great lake was a small patch of land, with the largest tree she had ever seen. Its total length reached at least a few hundred meters into the sky. At the top of the tree, there seemed to be a large spore of some kind. However, to her, it looked more like a rose that had yet to bloom. "Sarah-chan, you're a little late." A male voice spoke from behind her. Laughing shyly, Serafall turned around to look at the man speaking to her. "Sorry, Naruto. I had to avoid a lot of my fans to get here. It took me almost an hour, and you still didn't give up," Serafall explained a little childishly, sticking out her tongue as she laughed shyly. Naruto shook his head, smiling in amusement at the black-haired beauty. Serafall smiled at the man, taking a good look at him. It seemed he was still wearing the same outfit when she first met him. To be honest, Serafall couldn't imagine him wearing anything other than the one he was currently wearing. The blonde-haired man wore a black suit with a small orange sun embedded in the middle. Over his suit, he wore an orange coat with black flames licking the bottom and sleeves. He wore black sandals on his feet that had an orange stripe adorning the center. On his forearms, he wore orange gloves, a grinning fox head embedded in them. His golden blonde hair fell over his shoulders, two bangs framing his face while the rest fell over his forehead and occasionally swayed into his eyes. Whisker marks dotted his face, 3 on each cheek. His sapphire blue eyes looked into Serafall's purple ones with confidence and amusement. "I'm sure you made Serafall. But you're safe here, you don't have to worry about the fanba," Naruto said with a smile. "Now let's go." The blonde gestured. Eyes shining, Serafall leaped toward the blonde, arms outstretched. "Time, Naruto!" "Yay!" Enveloping the blonde in a tight hug, she smiled brightly as she snuggled her cheek against his, her generous bust pressing against his chest. Laughing, Naruto fought back the blush staining his cheeks, and instead returned the hug the girl was giving him. "So tell me, Sarah-chan, how have you been? Did anything interesting happen?" he asked. Serafall placed a finger on her chin and adopted a thoughtful face, making her look extremely cute. "I've been great. As for if anything interesting happened, I heard from my little sister that Rias-chan just got a new pawn recently. If I remember correctly, his name was Hoyaku-isan? No. Kakagyoki-insan? No. Was it Hagamo-kana? No. It was Hayada-issei, I think," Serafall said cutely, giggling to herself as she tried to remember if that name was correct or not. Chuckling, Naruto allowed himself to laugh at her dizziness, finding it both cute and amusing. Seeing Naruto laugh, Serafall smiled, happy to see one of her favorite people in the world laugh. The blonde's laughter was like music to her ears, and she loved the sound of it. She could listen to it forever and never tire of it. Oh Sarah-chan, you always know how to make me laugh. Naruto chuckled, patting the smaller girl on the head as she smiled at him. The two continued talking for the next 2 hours, discussing fun things they did and other things they could do with their abundant free time. The two sat under the sakura trees as they chatted happily, happy to be across from each other, as they laughed and joked around. Anything else interesting happened? Naruto asked after Serafall finished telling him about the current and future episodes she'll be doing of her TV show. Yes, Serafall replied, smiling childishly as she twirled. My hit show, The Magical Girl Leviathan, is getting her first movie, she exclaimed, smiling excitedly. I hope it's one of many to come in the future. Nodding, Naruto smiled a little childishly. Well, if anyone can help you get more movies in the future, it's you, Magical Girl Leviathan, the blonde said. Smiling, Serafall launched herself at the blonde, wrapping him in a tight hug. Naruto has always believed in me. I think that deserves a reward, she exclaimed. Naruto blinked. Reward? There's no nay dash. He was silently shocked when Serafall suddenly leaned down and placed a hard kiss on his neck. Naruto remained frozen before his eyes fluttered in embarrassment as he blushed. Serafall kept her lips on the blonde's neck for several more moments, sucking lightly and biting a little before releasing with a loud pop. Smiling at the blonde's embarrassed face, she giggled happily at the handiwork. The hickey mark on the blonde's neck wouldn't disappear for a while despite her healing abilities. She made sure of that by adding magic into that kiss. Does Naruto like her reward? Serafall asked, smiling as her eyes gazed brightly at her favorite blonde. Blushing, Naruto stammered. It was interesting, he replied. Naruto wants another one? Serafall whispered into his ear, her eyes shining as she batted her eyelashes. Naruto sputtered. That's to say, I dash. Naruto once again was unable to speak as Serafall kissed him full on the lips. Her lips moved slowly against his as she silently gestured for him to do the same. Soon enough, she got her wish as the blonde began to move his lips in sync with hers, making the raven-haired Mao happy beyond belief as the two locked eyes. Moving until she was straddling the blonde, Serafall deepened the kiss as she placed her hands on his shoulders for support, the blonde's arms wrapping around his waist to help keep her in place. Continuing to move their lips against each other, Serafall moaned lightly as Naruto's hands squeezed her ass. Feeling something brush against her lips, Serafall opened her mouth, letting Naruto's tongue slip into her mouth and play with hers. Moaning, she used her tongue to play with Naruto's, and their two tongues began to play gently as they kissed. Their tongues gently rapped against each other, exchanging saliva while occasionally slurping. Naru so nice it's slurp. Is slurp delicious slurp? Serafall managed to get out between kisses. Parting their lips, their faces stayed close together as they breathed in to catch their precious air. While their lips parted, their tongues didn't as they played outside in the open air, their saliva dripping down their chins as their tongues continued to play softly. Pushing Naruto back until he was lying on his back, Serafall pulled his face away, their tongues unable to play due to the growing distance. Gathering saliva into her mouth, Serafall lowered herself back down and pressed her lips against the blonde's, the two of them gasping as their lips pressed together. Using this as her chance, Serafall allowed the gathered saliva to make its way into Naruto's mouth, the blonde slurping it all up as she did so. With their tongues playing once more, the two moaned together as they kissed. Sarah-chan slurp your slurp taste slurp is slurp wonderful slurp, Naruto managed to say, saliva running down his cheek as he lingered at mouths with the black-haired, purple-eyed beauty. Moaning, Serafall responded by pulling the blonde closer, their kiss deepening even further, if possible. Pulling away, Serafall sighed happily as she rested her head on the blonde's chest, listening to his heartbeat while admiring its sound. Naruto placed his chin on Serafall's head, his nose catching her scent. What caused this? The blonde asked. Thinking for a moment as she leaned back into his chest, Serafall finally replied. Naruto. I've been visiting you for centuries, since I first stumbled upon you here after the Great War. For centuries I visited. I told you stories of the outside world, while you listened. You told me stories of a time before demons and angels came to be. You are one of the oldest beings in the world, probably as old as the Infinity Dragon. Stopping, Serafall smiled at the blonde, who was listening to her every word. During the 3 centuries I visited you, I learned so much about you, and you learned so much about me. Those 3 centuries were the best of my life. All the time, I would wonder how you were doing when I wasn't with you. I would always ask myself, was he okay? What if something happens to him? I love you, Naruto! She exclaimed, hugging the blonde tightly as she buried her face in his chest. Eyes wide with surprise, Naruto looked down at the girl clinging to him. Gently stroking her head, Naruto found himself smiling at the girl fondly. Her eyes held a hint of love. This girl, who had visited him for 3 centuries, alone destroyed all the loneliness he had felt trapped in this place. Lowering his head, the blonde kissed her softly, gaining Serafall's attention as she looked up at him with glowing purple eyes. I love you, Sarah-chan, he said sincerely. Smiling widely, Serafall leaned down and planted a loving, gentle kiss on the blonde, which the blonde returned while gently caressing her cheek. Pulling away after several long moments to catch some precious air, Serafall leaned against his chest, a bright, happy smile adorning her features as she listened to his heartbeat. After several minutes of remaining in that position in his arms, Serafall spoke. Naruto? She began, earning an inquisitive hum from the man. Why are you trapped here? You told me many stories, but never much about yourself or how you were trapped here. It was silent for several minutes, and Serafall feared she'd crossed the line, but her doubts were quelled when she felt and heard the blonde sigh. Tightening his grip on Serafall, Naruto looked up at the enormous tree, a sad look in his eyes. My tale begins on the night of my birth. And so, his tale began. From his birth, he told Serafall how a masked man was kidnapped shortly after his birth, forcing his father to briefly leave his mother behind while he rescued him and ensured his safety. How the masked man ripped out a sealed entity that had been sealed within his mother since she was a child. How his father rescued his mother and placed her beside him. How his father fought the masked man until he forced him to retreat, leaving his father to fight the fearsome Kyuubi no Kitsune. He continued, telling how his father sealed the beast inside him with the help of his mother and, as they are the last parents, they sacrificed themselves so he could live. From there, Naruto began to tell Serafall about his childhood. He hesitated, but told her anyway, telling her how the villagers constantly charged at him, how they ignored his own existence, how lonely his childhood was since he couldn't make friends. When Serafall heard this, she nearly cried, but she remained strong as she listened. For a moment in her life, the Mao who was so cheerful and carefree, for a single moment, Serafall despised humans. However, her brief moment of hatred was quickly fixed when she put it out of her mind in favor of Naruto continuing his story. He told her how he came to see one of his teachers, Irika, as a surrogate older brother. Of how he later spent the academy after his other teacher, Mizuki, lied to him about a test, his team assignments with the boy he disliked, and a girl he had a crush on since childhood, meeting his teacher and team leader Kakashi. He told her about Kakashi's test, to which Serafall laughed briefly, his assigned D ranks, until he finally told her about his first mission at C rank, which later became A rank, his encounter with Zabuza and Haku, their impact on him, and their eventual deaths when they died as humans instead of the tools they believed themselves to be. From there, he told Serafall about the Chunin exams, up to the death of his grandfather, the Sandaime Hokage. From there, he explained how he was chosen, by Jiraiya, to acquire Tsunade of the Sannin so that she would take up the mantle of Hokage. He told her about Tsunade's reluctance to take the hat, and how she eventually accepted the responsibility after a long fight with Orochimaru and his apprentice. From there, Naruto told Serafall that after taking the mantle of Hokage, Team 7 had many adventures after she took her seat. How slowly but surely, Team 7 was beginning to fall apart as Sasuke slowly distanced himself. How Sasuke defected, and how Naruto was forced to face him at the Valley of the End. Their long and admittedly epic battle. How Sasuke won because Naruto hesitated and scratched his forehead protector instead. From there, he talked about his 3-year training journey with Jiraiya, his training, and the fun things they did together. From there, he spoke of how his friend and brother, Gaara, was in danger due to an Akatsuki attack. How they saved Gaara and brought him back from the dead after he had died for a short, limited time at the cost of Grandma Chiyo's life. He went on to tell her how Sasuke eventually killed his brother, Itachi, and turned his anger and hatred toward Konoha. He spoke of how Tobi, the same masked man who killed his parents, manipulated Sasuke, turning him into a vengeful monster. He told her how Pain, the supposed leader of Akatsuki, killed Jiraiya and his training to master Senjutsu, something that shocked Serafall. He told her about his battle with Pain and briefly met with her father after giving in to his anger and the outcome. After that, he continued, telling her about the 5 Kage summit that was formed after Sasuke supposedly defeated and captured Killer Bee, brother of the Raikage and Jinchuriki of the Hachibi. But he later discovered that it was a ruse. He told her how Sasuke attacked the 5 Kage summit in search of Danzo, the unofficial Rokudame, unofficial because Danzo wasn't given the ceremony. He told her how Sasuke confronted the 5 Kage, and then chased Danzo. How he killed the man, and his brief confrontation with Sasuke. Shortly after, he told Serafall how Tobi, now calling himself Madara, or whatever he claimed to be, declared war on the 5 great nations. He told her about his training with Killer Bee to master the power of the Kyuubi, his battle with the nine-tailed entity, briefly meeting his mother and learning the truth from her, his defeat of the Kyuubi, and mastering its power. He told her how he later joined the war after convincing the Raikage, and how he and Killer Bee became great assets in the war. He also told her how Madara was using Kabuto to bring the dead to life alongside his white Setsu army. Soon, he got to the part where the real Madara appeared and destroyed nearly a quarter of their forces with only taijutsu, a few fire-style jutsu, and the use of his brief use of Sukuna. He recounted how Madara was somehow able to activate the Rinnegan, the same eyes that Pain had, the fearsome divine power that Madara wielded while using massive meteorites to completely decimate the rest of their forces. He told her how the 5 Kage soon appeared, and how they would fight the real Madara while he fought the fake one. He continued, telling her about his long battle with Tobi, how he finally befriended the Kyuubi, and how after a long and grueling battle, he finally managed to break the mask at war with the help of Guy, Kakashi, and Killer Bee. Eventually, Tobi's identity was revealed to be Obito, and Serafall was shocked to hear that it was Kakashi's best friend and teammate who was believed to be dead. He told him that shortly after Tobi's identity was revealed, Madara appeared alongside Obito, which Naruto learned shortly after the 5 Kage were brutally defeated by the former Uchiha. Thus began the long fight with Madara and Obito, as they received multiple close calls due to the raw power and battle-hardened intellect of Madara Uchiha, and Obito's dangerous abilities. Later in the fight, as hope was lost, the rest of the Ninja Alliance came to aid in the battle with the 2 Uchiha, and the recently revived Jubi. The valiant fight to stop the Jubi, and how everything seemed to be useless until Obito finally became the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, and soon after the arrival of the revived past Hokage of Konoha along with Sasuke and his group, following the shocking appearance of Orochimaru. Finally, after a long and grueling battle, they finally managed to defeat Obito, but soon after, Madara betrayed Obito as the former Uchiha fully revived himself as he regained his blood and flesh. How Madara, after being fully revived, once again started decimating most of the Shinobi Alliance even without his eyes, and how, after regaining his eyes, he defeated all 9 Bijuu with ease and absorbed them into the Gerumazo along with Naruto's Kyuubi and Killer Bee Hachibi. How Madara became the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, and finally obtained the true power of the Sage of 6 Paths. Finally, he told her how he and Sasuke briefly encountered the Sage of 6 Paths, and his power is increased by the ancient sage. He told her how Madara was once again godlike in his power and how he defeated Guy after he opened all the inner gates, and how he planned to completely destroy Guy's body if he hadn't intervened when Sasuke appeared beside him moments later. Then, the long fight that followed, and their failure to stop the Moon Eye's plan. How Madara plotted to destroy them completely, before being betrayed by Black Setsu, who revealed he was actually working for Kaguya. How Kaguya was revived and, despite her increased power, stood no chance against the divine woman whose power surpassed even that of the Jubi. He told her about his long fight with Kaguya and how she constantly transferred them between dimensions, Obito's death after sacrificing himself to save his and Kakashi's lives. Kakashi's power increased after obtaining Obito's Sharingan, and the horrific transformation Kaguya underwent. Finally, he realized that they couldn't seal the transformed Kaguya after all, and so another solution was formed. With the remaining chakra from the Bija and the buried chakra of Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura, he sealed the dimension they were all in. There, they planned to let the transformed Kaguya remain there for eternity while they escaped using Kakashi's Kamui. They almost escaped, if the transformed Kaguya hadn't tried to tear them all apart. It was at that moment that Naruto threw them all through the portal, while he alone was trapped with the beast Kaguya had become. It was there that Naruto told her that for millions of years he and Kaguya continued to fight. The blonde's blood and his powerful chakra, especially the Kyuubi within, granted him something close to immortality. Unable to age, but still capable of dying. With the long and drawn-out fight with Kaguya, he had finally defeated her by sealing her entire form into a tree, and created a seal that siphoned her chakra by channeling it into the seal, keeping her, and the place they resided, sealed from the world. So for millions of years I've been here, making sure Kaguya never broke free from her bonds, and to make sure that if she ever does, I'll be here to seal her away again. Naruto finished, looking into Serafall's eyes as she looked on sadly. Millions of years, Serafall murmured. That's a long time, she suddenly exclaimed. You're an Aji-chan. She laughed. Pouting, Naruto crossed his arms. Oh, an Aji-chan, right? He began. I guess Sarah-chan doesn't want any more kisses from this Aji-chan. Panicked, Serafall laughed nervously. And no, Naruto isn't old. He's aged well, she replied. Chuckling, Naruto cupped Serafall's cheeks before lowering his head, his lips gently claiming hers as Serafall returned happily. Pulling away, Serafall stared at the enormous tree for a moment. Can she ever get out? She asked, worried if Kaguya would ever be freed from her bonds. Naruto scoffed slightly. I placed over 1,000 seals on it over the years to ensure it would never escape its prison. Besides, even if it did escape, it would need to find a way out of this dimension I've imprisoned us in. Even so, I've placed at least 1,000,000 seals to ensure nothing gets in or out, he said. Remaining silent for a moment, he looked at Serafall with an expressionless gaze. Now that I think about it, I'm still trying to figure out how the hell you keep getting in and out of here, Sarah-chan, the blonde stated. Laughing, Serafall winked. Nothing can stop the great Leviathan, he said with a carefree twist. Smiling, Naruto chuckled as he ran his hand through his black hair. Serafall fell into his lap as she happily leaned into his touch. Opening her eyes briefly, Serafall looked into Naruto's sapphire blue eyes, her purple pleading slightly. Naruto, can you come with me? Out of this place. Away from here and into the outside world? She asked softly. Frowning for a moment, Naruto stared at the enormous tree in thought. What about her? I have to be here in case she breaks free from her bonds, he stated. You said it yourself. It's almost impossible for her to get out, she exclaimed. Besides, you can still visit here, just to be sure, she told him. Blinking in surprise at the sense in her logic, Naruto chuckled as he scratched his head. You make a fair point, Sarah-chan, he said. Very well, I'll go. He smiled at Serafall's joyful delight, and she jumped onto his lap like a kid on sugar. On one condition, he told her, making her freeze in her tracks. Smiling as he leaned down to her ear, Naruto gently licked her lubricant, causing her to moan. Remember when you told me about the evil peace system? At her nod, he continued. I want you to make me a member of your peerage, he said, causing Serafall to gasp in shock. Sure, she still had her full set of evil peace prototypes, but that was because she never really had any interest in forming her own peerage. Why? She asked. Smiling, Naruto continued licking his ear lubricant as he answered. I want everyone to know that I belong to the wonderful and fabulous Leviathan. He whispered into her ear, biting gently as she moaned. What do you say, Serafall? He traced her name, moving down to her neck as he kissed and nibbled. Moaning, Serafall pressed herself against the blonde, wrapping her arms around him as she fused her small body against his, her large breasts pressing against his chest. Blushing when she began kissing and nibbling at her neck, Serafall replied, "Okay, only if Naruto promises to make sure people know I belong to you," she told him. "Already done," the blonde replied, looking at the hickey he left on his neck. He smiled slightly as he channeled his chakra into that mound to ensure it never came off. That, and it also functioned as a Haratian seal. What? His father could put a seal on you just by touching you. Why couldn't he go beyond that and improve it? Naruto was almost certain that if you touched him anywhere on his body, he could mark you with a Haratian seal. Almost, considering he had yet to fully test it. Smiling, Serafall grabbed her magic staff, making Naruto wonder what she was doing. Placing her hand on top of her staff, Serafall opened it, revealing it to be a secret compartment. Placing her finger and thumb inside, she then pulled out a chess piece. A secret compartment in his staff that leads to a small pocket dimension. Naruto muttered in surprise and awe. "Very impressive, Sera-chan," the blonde told her. Looking at Naruto with a soft smile, she gestured for the blonde to lie on his back. Following her command, the blonde lay back on the grass, feeling surprised when Serafall straddled him. She smiled at the blonde, giving him a loving look of comfort as she placed the chess piece on his chest. Smiling brightly as the chess piece glowed, she began the chant as a circle appeared below the two of them. "I, Serafall Leviathan, accept you, Naruto Uzumaki, as part of my peerage. May you live a happy new life as my queen. My love." With that, Serafall lowered her head and gave Naruto a loving and gentle kiss as the chess piece began to sink into his body. Shivering slightly, Naruto focused on the kiss as his body underwent the changes of being reincarnated into a demon. He could feel something trembling in his back, and he felt himself growing stronger as his body changed from human to demon. His already long lifespan increased even further as he felt his powers increase even more due to receiving the queen piece. Once he was done, Naruto quickly kissed Serafall back as his arms wrapped around her small body. Sitting up, he looked into Serafall's purple eyes as they separated, a trail of saliva connecting them as their tongues returned to their mouths. The trail of saliva broke, and Naruto looked back as he heard the sound of fabric tearing. He could only watch as the back of his clothes were destroyed after his newly gained bat-like wings took the liberty of breaking free. Hearing a giggle, Naruto looked at Serafall, seeing her wings free, but not scratching her clothes. "Demons wear special clothes that allow our wings to bypass the fabric to free them without destroying the clothes in the process," she told him. "I'll have new clothes tailored for you." "Thank you, Sera-chan." Taking her hand, Serafall squealed as the blonde pulled her down to sit on his lap, their wings disappearing into their backs as they cradled each other. Moving on his lap until she was facing him, Serafall wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him in with a passionate kiss as the blonde placed his hands on her waist. Moaning, they deepened the kiss as Serafall's nether regions rubbed against his crotch again. Pulling back slightly, Naruto allowed his tongue to play with Serafall's tongue in the open for several long moments, before pulling back. The black-haired beauty pouted at the blonde. Chuckling, Naruto stood up, Serafall squeaking as she wrapped her legs around his waist for support, while the blonde placed his hands on her thighs. Looking up into her eyes as she looked down, Naruto smirked. "Well, Sera-chan, I don't know about you, but I for one am curious about the outside world since I've been stuck here for so long," he told her. Smiling, Serafall kissed the blonde for a moment before releasing her, Naruto gently setting her down on the ground. Quickly grabbing her hand as their fingers intertwined, she excitedly pushed him. "Come on, Naruto! I can't wait for you to meet my Oka-san and Ota-san," she said excitedly, freezing when the blonde placed his lips near her ear, his hot breath making her shudder as she felt a tickle of pleasure on her back. She blushed slightly as the blonde spoke huskily in her ear. "Shouldn't I call you Oka-san and Ota-san too, Sera-chan?" the blonde said more than he asked. Blushing deeper, Serafall smiled brightly as she continued to drag the blonde with her. "Yes. Oka-san and Ota-san would love it if you did," she said happily. Laughing, Naruto gave Serafall a kiss on the cheek as the two Serafall opened the barrier, making a small rip in the air. Naruto looked at it, still dumbfounded as to how the girl did that. Leaving the thought behind him, Naruto looked into Serafall's eyes as they shone brightly. With a soft smile, he and the girl walked out of the portal as it closed behind them. The House of Citri was one of the 72 pillars of the underworld. Of the 72 noble families, they were ranked among the highest, as the former heir was now the current Leviathan. They held the same fame and prestige as the Gremory clan, and while they were just as caring as the Gremorys, they were caring to the point that they also considered their servants close friends and family. The servants of the Citri household happily served their current lord and mistress, and some of them had the honor of being Serafall's playmate when she was still young. Even so, the veteran retainers found Serafall's childish antics exhausting whenever she visited and stayed overnight. They were pleased that Lord Citri's second daughter and lover was more mature than Serafall. Again, they found Serafall's childlike personality refreshing when they were having a bad day. The 2 guards at the main gate took their jobs very seriously. Of all the servants, they were the most serious when on duty, but quite calm when off. You can imagine their surprise when a magic circle appeared in front of them with the Leviathan symbol glowing in the middle. They knew who was coming, so they didn't tense up or anything. Instead, they stood there casually, as if it were just an everyday occurrence. Imagine their surprise when Serafall appeared with a handsome young man in her company. When they saw the young man's blonde hair, they thought he was a member of the Phoenix clan, but something told them their assumption was incorrect. The young man's sapphire blue eyes looked at the Citri mansion with childlike curiosity, before turning his attention to the 2 guards and giving them both a warm smile. The 2 guards noticed the radiant smile Serafall gave the blonde man, who turned his attention to her. "Naritan! Welcome to the Citri mansion," Serafall said excitedly, her eyes shining as she looked at the blonde. Sharing a small glance with his fellow guard, the guard on the right side as he coughed into his hand, Serafall turned her attention to the guard, bowing her head slightly as Naruto joined her in looking at the guard. "Serafall-sama, it's a pleasure to have you with us again," the guard began professionally. "May I ask who the young man with us is, if I may?" he asked politely, smiling brightly as she held Naruto's hand with their fingers intertwined. Serafall replied, "This is Naruto Uzumaki, my new queen of my peerage, and someone very special to me." Blinking, the 2 guards looked down at their intertwined hands, and saw Serafall's bright, happy gaze. Looking at the blonde, they noticed the shy yet happy look in his eyes as well. Smiling slightly, the guards bowed. "Nice to meet you, Naruto-sama." They saw Naruto raise his hand in a reassuring manner, his eyes looking at them warmly as he smiled kindly. "Please, you don't need to bow to me. Also, feel free to refer to me simply as Naruto," he told them warmly. The 2 guards straightened. "Of course, Naruto-sama," they both said, their eyes shining with joy as the blonde gave them a deadpan look. "I trust you're here to see Lord and Lady Citri? Please go to Serafall-sama, Naruto-sama," he told them. Smiling brightly, Serafall began to drag the blonde along with her. The blonde gave her a joyful smile. "Come on, Naritan! It's time to see Oka-chan and Ota-chan," she said excitedly. When the 2 walked through the doors, the 2 guards remained silent for several moments. "I like that guy," the second guard said, chuckling a little. The first guard shook his head. "I do too," he said. "Though something tells me things are never boring with him," he mused. The second guard shrugged. "As long as Serafall-sama is happy, right?" he said. "Yes. As long as she's happy," the first agreed. Inside the mansion, Serafall happily dragged the blonde through the halls. The servants and maids looked at them in bewilderment and surprise as they watched the small, buxom girl drag the taller, more handsome young man through the halls. Finally reaching the door to the master bedroom, Serafall opened it with a bright smile on her face. "Ota-chan! Oka-chan!" the girl shouted happily. 2 figures sitting in chairs blinked at her entrance before smiling warmly. "Ah, Serafall! How are you, my daughter?" the man of the 2 asked. He had shoulder-length black hair, a little messy but also tightly combed. Dark gray eyes that showed kindness and warmth at the sight of his daughter. The other figure, female, had long black hair that reached her waist. Her bangs were styled similarly to Serafall's, and her purple eyes shone happily at the sight of her daughter. "I'm fine too, Chan," Serafall replied, smiling happily. "That's good." Lord Citri spoke, smiling as he looked at his daughter. "Oh my goodness, who is this young man with you, Serafall?" Lady Styri asked, standing beside her husband, as she closely examined the blonde man beside her daughter. Blinking, Lord Styri looked at the blonde man beside his daughter, and curiously tilted his head slightly. Laughing, Serafall clung to Naruto's arm, smiling at her parents. "Tu-chan, Ka-chan, this is Naruto Uzumaki, my queen and someone very, very special to me," she told them. Blinking in bewilderment, Lord Citri and Lady Citri remained silent for several long moments, before suddenly smiling happily. "My daughter finally got herself a man!" Lord Citri declared, crying anime tears as he smiled excitedly. "Hello, my future son-in-law! You can call me Tu-chan," Lady Citri squealed, pulling Naruto and Serafall into a crushing hug. "Yes! Finally, the grandchildren are coming! When will they get married? When will the wedding be? I must know!" she told them excitedly as she let go of them. Serafall blushed as she gave Naruto a beautiful smile. Naruto laughed at Serafall's parents' antics, finding that he liked them both. Caressing her cheek, Naruto leaned in and gave Serafall a kiss as Lady Citri squealed and quickly took a picture. For the rest of the day, both Naruto and Serafall stayed with Lord and Lady Citri. The blonde felt right at home with the two, as they had fun like a family should. By the time they actually bothered to check the time, it was already midnight, and it was agreed that Serafall and Naruto would be staying the night. The pair sharing a bed as Lady Citri snapped another picture of them sleeping together, all while Lord Citri contented himself with silent laughter, amused as his wife's antics were. "So that's Sarah-chan's little sister, huh?" Naruto mused. The blonde was in a tree that was on the grounds of Kuho Academy's school. His form went unnoticed as he sat on a branch, his back against the bark of the tree. Smiling slightly, the blonde's form disappeared as he activated his cloaking jutsu to hide his presence. Just in time as Sona looked out the window of her classroom, her purple eyes narrowed upon the tree he was sitting in. Launching his camouflage technique once she looked away, Naruto chuckled. "She's a lot more observant than I gave her credit for," the blonde mused. Shifting his eyes, with his enhanced vision, he looked at another widow a few classes down from Sona's class. He soon found a girl with crimson-red hair sitting in front of the window. Her turquoise eyes paid close attention to her homeroom instructor. Once again activating her camouflage technique, the crimson-haired girl turned her head and squinted at her tree. Once again releasing his technique when she looked away, Naruto chuckled briefly. "How interesting. So that's Rias Gremory, huh? Impressive, seems she's just as observant as Sona. No wonder they're rivals," he mused gleefully. Chuckling as he looked at Sona, the blonde began mentally comparing the two sisters. He could see the similarities, both with black hair and purple eyes. But that seemed to be where the similarities ended. Sona had much shorter hair than her sister, who had long hair. She wore glasses and didn't have as generous a chest size as Serafall's. Naruto could also tell that she had a serious personality, a complete opposite to her sister's childish and carefree attitude. Grinning, Naruto's eyes flashed with mischief. He couldn't wait to tease Serafall's younger sister. Hearing the sound of a bell ringing, Naruto tilted his head slightly as he noticed all the students starting to get up and move around. He raised his eyebrow when he noticed Sona and Rias quickly get up and disappear into the hallways. Shrugging, the blonde leaned back against his tree, closing his eyes as he placed his hands on top of his head. Moments later, the blonde almost smiled as he activated his camouflage once more, just as Rias and Sona arrived and looked at the tree's many branches. Specifically, the branch the blonde was sitting on. "Come out now! We know you're there!" Sona demanded, Rias frowning slightly beside her. Smiling in surprise, Naruto looked around, making sure no other students were near the tree before launching his camouflage technique. When his form was revealed, the two girls tensed, their eyes narrowing slightly as they regarded him warily. "Nice to meet you, Sona-chan, Rias-chan." He greeted them lightly, smiling at the girls. His eyes narrowed, and the two kings frowned at them. How do you know us? Rias asked. Laughing, Naruto replied. You two are quite notable in the underworld. However, I learned the most about Sona, as a certain someone always speaks highly of her. Of course, when I hear about you, Sona, by extension, I'll learn about you, Rias. Narrowing her eyes, Sona wondered who the blonde was referring to. A person who spoke highly of her. She could only think of one person, but she immediately dismissed the thought. Her sister wouldn't talk to such a strange stranger unless she knew them, or they caught her eye, and almost nothing caught her eye these days. Who is the person who told you about me? Sona demanded coldly, Rias joining her while also giving her a small glance. Smiling, Naruto saw no problem with giving them a few small clues. I'll give you 2 small clues. You know the person well, and I'm also a member of his peerage. He told them cryptically, his eyes shining with mirth as they narrowed their eyes in thought. Well, I must go now, he told them, standing from his bowed position. And Rias, he stopped, gaining the crimson-haired girl's attention when she saw the warm gaze the blonde was giving her. Congratulations on your pawn's recent victory over Razor. With that, the blonde turned and focused on the Horatian seal he placed on Serafall. He should have finished filming his last episode of his magical girl show. With that thought, the blonde absent-mindedly placed the Horatian seal on the tree as he disappeared into thin air as if he had never been there, much to the surprise of Sona and Rias as they stared in disbelief at his current location. Watching Serafall pace back and forth in concern, Naruto couldn't help but frown. He understood why she was so worried, and why her eyes held a deep concern, and the beginnings of panic and hysteria. Lord and Lady Citri were in a similar state, though they had more control over their expressions. However, Naruto could feel the panic and worry rolling off him in waves. Sighing, the blonde stood up, advancing on the still walking Serafall. Wrapping his arms around her as he reached her, the girl turned and buried her head in his chest as he held her. Gently stroking her hair, Naruto murmured soft words of comfort into her ears. It's okay, Sarah-chan. I'm sure Sona will be fine, he whispered to her, still stroking her hair. And Narutan. I believe in Sona-tan, I really do, but she's up against Kokobile. He's one of the fallen angel generals for some reason, she told the blonde with concern and worry. Sighing softly, Naruto gently stroked her hair, knowing why he couldn't help his precious sister right now. The powerful barrier Kokobile erected around Ko Academy was truly powerful, one that even kept the Maos power at bay for a long time. Naruto suspected the barrier would remain strong for at least 2 days, even while withstanding the Maos attacks. It was a really powerful barrier, however the Horatian seal he placed on that tree back there. The blonde knew the seal would be useful, but would it allow him a loophole to enter Kokobile's barrier? There was only one way to find out. With determination in his eyes, Naruto gently sat Serafall next to her parents, much to the girl's confusion as Lord and Lady Citri watched curiously. He placed a soft kiss on Serafall's lips before pulling back moments later. Narutan? Serafall asked in confusion. Throwing a warm smile at Serafall, the blonde man gave Lord and Lady Citri a 2-fingered salute. I'll make sure Sona is safe, he told them, much to their confusion. Giving them one last look, the blonde man vanished into thin air, focusing on the Horatian seal he placed on the tree in Kuo. When Naruto's form materialized, the blonde-haired boy had to lean against the tree he'd previously occupied while his wounds healed. Moving through that barrier with the Horatian was surprisingly difficult. It seems the barrier was also designed to prevent others from simply teleporting away. Naruto had to actively push himself, otherwise he wouldn't have made it through. Doing so, however, injured him to some extent. Once his burns healed, the blonde stood up, narrowing his eyes in the direction he felt Kokobile's power, along where Rias and Sona's peerage were. Disappearing in a burst of speed, the blonde moved through the grounds of Koa's school. His form blurred as he nearly broke the sound barrier. He finally arrived at the place where everyone was in mere moments. God is dead! Kokobile's voice shouted. With narrowed eyes, Naruto listened intently from his perch on the roof as Kokobile explained how God died in the Great War. Frowning, Naruto saw the disbelief in everyone's eyes as Kokobile's words registered. A blue-haired girl and an orange-haired girl were the most affected. With your deaths, a new great war will begin! Kokubile shouted maniacally. Now die! With that exclamation, the mighty fallen angel general prepared to throw a great spear of light that formed in his hands. He would have done so, had Naruto chosen not to interfere. What? Kokubile cried out in surprise as he felt his forearm squeezed so tightly that he actually winced. Turning his head, Kokubile looked at the man who interfered. The blonde-haired man gave him a small smile. But there was something cold about that smile of his. Who are you? Kokubile asked, forming another light spear in his other hand as Rias and Sona looked at Naruto in surprise. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Just call me Naruto. Naruto told him, channeling chakra into his hand as he raised it just in time to catch Kokubile's light spear. Grabbing it with his hand, Naruto felt some amusement as everyone's eyes widened in shock at the fact that he was holding Kokubile's light spear. Although, the blonde did grimace slightly as he held the spear. Seeing Naruto's grimace, Kokubile smiled slightly. You're not completely immune to light, he muttered. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto clenched his fist and broke the light spear in his grasp. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise at his action, registering that he, a demon, not only held a light spear in his hands, but also crushed it. With the spear of light destroyed, Naruto placed his hand at his side while his other hand was still gripping Kokubile's forearm. Everyone saw the slight burns on Naruto's hand holding the spear, before the burns healed within moments, much to everyone's surprise. So you're Kokubile? It's a pleasure to meet one of the fallen angel's generals. Naruto spoke, releasing Kokubile from his grasp. Kokubile immediately jumped a few meters away from the blonde, wariness in his eyes as he looked at the blonde. He's not completely immune to light, but he's a demon. He shouldn't even be able to resist the properties of light. It's poisonous to demons after all. And his hair, blonde, has almost the same shade as the Phoenix clan, but he's obviously not a member of the Phoenix. He's a reincarnated demon. The energy I feel from him isn't as pure as a pure blood. Since he's a reincarnated demon, the question is, who is his master? Kokubile thought with narrowed eyes. Sneering while grinning sadistically, Kokubile formed two light spears in his hands. He pointed them at the blonde. Tell me something, Naruto Uzumaki. Who is your master? The fallen angel demanded. Hearing Kokubile's demand, Sona and Rias, along with their peerage, listened intently, curious to know who the blonde's master was. Smiling slightly, Naruto breathed in for a moment before exhaling. Slowly, an orange tint appeared over his eyes, his iris turning yellow as his pupil formed a horizontal slash. Suddenly, a light blue aura covered the blonde, his power spreading in waves as everyone felt it, and were shocked by the sensation he produced. Kaneko, Rias's tower, trembled violently as her hazel eyes widened in fear. Senjutsu, she whispered in terror. Hearing that, Rias and Sona's eyes widened in shock as they were close enough to hear Kaneko's whisper. Senjutsu? Impossible. Senjutsu is said to be impossible to control. Kuroka, the stray cat, is proof of that. How is this man able to hold his own despite using Senjutsu? Who are you? Naruto Uzumaki. Sona thought as she looked at Naruto's form in shock and disbelief. You asked me who my king was? Naruto spoke, drawing everyone's attention. With wings sprouting from his back, Naruto suddenly appeared in front of Kokubile in an instant, surprising the fallen angel with the speed at which the blonde moved. That knowledge is useless to you, Naruto said. Grabbing Kokubile by the face, the blonde flew through the air, breaking the sound barrier as he did so. Breaking through the barrier Kokubile had created, Naruto continued flying at the speed of sound, zooming across the ocean as several islands passed them by. Stopping on an uninhabited island, Naruto threw Kokubile towards the island. The fallen angel was thrown through the air as he crashed onto the island. Floating towards the large crater Kokubile had made, Naruto hovered slightly above the ground before his feet gently touched it. Wings retracting as he stared into the dust. The dust parted as Kokubile used his wings to blow the dust aside. The form of the fallen angel with large amounts of sand covering it before shaking it all off. Quickly scanning the area, he saw several huts and houses made of wood and thatch. Kokubile glared at the blonde. "Where are we?" he asked. "Welcome to Nassau," the blonde replied. Kokubile's eyes widened slightly in shock at the blonde's words, unable to believe what the blonde told him. "Nassau? Impossible. Nassau is on the other side of the world. There's no way we could have traveled halfway around the world." However, as he looked once more at the cabins and houses, Kokubile couldn't deny how old they were. This island really was Nassau, one of the main pirate strongholds during the golden age of piracy. Frowning, Kokubile looked at the blonde with renewed wariness. Such speed, he was able to travel almost halfway around the world in just a few moments. How fast is he? He thought, cold sweat trickling down his neck. "Oh," Naruto began. "Are you ready? This will be our battlefield. Here, we can do everything we can and not worry about anyone's lives." "Oh? Very thoughtful," Kokubile complimented. "But ultimately, fool. No restraints, I'll crush you where you stand." With that exclamation, Kokubile released the control he had over his powers. In an instant, his form was bathed in brilliant light energy as the sand around him began to rise and rise from the ground. Narrowing his toad-like eyes, Naruto stopped suppressing his powers. His form was bathed in a dark blue aura of chakra as a small shockwave emerged from him. Opening his eyes, Kokubile felt himself getting a little nervous. Such raw power, and the feeling of this energy chakra. And not just any chakra, but senjutsu, he thought with a hint of fear. "Who are you?" he demanded again. "I think I can indulge your curiosity since we're the only ones here," Naruto mused. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, a sage and the queen of Serafall Leviathan," he announced. Kokubile's eyes widened to epic proportions, before a crooked grin appeared on his features as he laughed madly. "The queen of Serafall Leviathan? This is working in my favor. If I can kill you, the war I was hoping to start will begin. With you dead, Serafall will want revenge. Prepare to die by my Uzumaki hands," Kokubile exclaimed, a mad glint in his eyes as he licked his lips. "Oh? Is that true? Do you wish to start a war? I have no choice but to stop you. In any case, prepare yourself, Kokubile." Naruto spoke, taking a taijutsu stance. His knees bent slightly as he held his arms at his sides, fists slightly raised. "It's been a while since my last fight, so forgive me if I'm a little abrupt." Kokubile didn't know what happened. One moment he was standing upright, staring at the blonde. The next, he was bent over, holding his stomach after the blonde dealt him a devastating blow. His eyes widened in disbelief as he gasped in shock. Such speed!" the fallen angel muttered in shock. "As I said," Naruto spoke. "Forgive me if I'm a little rough. I don't know my own strength in this form, so I apologize if this fight is short," he said with a small smile. Naruto didn't allow Kokubile time to recover as he landed several blows to the fallen angel's face, each blow with great force. The fallen angel was powerless as each blow stunned him. Naruto lifted his leg, preparing to kick the fallen angel across the field. Finally recovering, Kokubile ducked under Naruto's kick, causing the blonde to blink in surprise. As it turned out, the sage was unprepared when Kokubile buried his fist in the blonde's face, the fallen angel not relenting as he continuously slammed his fists against the blonde's face. Catching Kokubile's fist, Naruto shoved him to the side. Kokubile spun around as he formed a light spear in his hands. Smirking, the fallen one was prepared to slice the blonde's head off. He would have succeeded if Naruto hadn't ducked under the spear of light. Two kunai appeared in his hands. Naruto struck out, the two blades nearly sinking into the fallen angel's flesh. They would have, if Kokubile hadn't leaped, flapping his wings, and the fallen angel took to the sky. Dozens of light spears formed around him as he grinned madly. "Die!" Kokubile laughed as the spears rained down on the blonde's stationary form. Tensing, Naruto dodged. Weaving between two light spears, Naruto threw one of his kunai at the fallen angel looming over him. Snorting in amusement, Kokubile tilted his head as the knife flew past him. Opening his mouth to taunt the blonde, Kokubil's words died in his throat as Naruto disappeared from his line of sight. Stunned, the fallen angel was unable to react as he felt a white-hot pain erupt from his back. Screaming in pain and agony, the fallen angel looked back, surprised to see Naruto behind him, burying a spinning blue energy sphere into his back. Falling to the ground, Kokubil groaned as his wings were severely damaged, taking them out of the fight. Painfully retracting his wings into his back, Kokubil snarled at the blonde who landed on the ground, his form relatively unscathed from their skirmish. Forming a light spear, Kokubil threw it at the blonde. Dodging the spear, Naruto's eyes followed it as it disappeared over the horizon. Turning to meet the fallen angel, Naruto's eyes widened in surprise when he felt the spear explode in the distance. Turning back to the direction the spear was going, Naruto felt surprise when he saw the explosion that occurred at least a few square miles away. Impressive power, but nothing compared to Kaguya. That woman could create and change dimensions at will after all. Turning to the fallen angel, she gasped as she felt Kokubil run through her body with a light spear. "Got you!" The fallen angel smiled. Grinning as blood trickled down his chin, Naruto spoke. "No, I have you," he said, much to Kokubil's confusion. Boom! With that, Kokubil was thrown backward with tremendous force as Naruto exploded. What the hell?" Kokubil asked in shock. "Did he commit suicide?" he muttered as he straightened up. "In a way, it was suicide," a voice spoke up next to him. Eyes widening, Kokubil turned his head to see the blonde standing beside him. He was a good shadow clone. It was only right that he had to die. With that, Naruto struck out, kicking Kokubil in the head, sending the fallen angel skidding across the ground. Sand kicking up and out as the fallen angel dug a small trench. Growling, the fallen angel shook the sand off his body and glared at the blonde. Wide-eyed, Kokubil felt fear when he saw the blonde holding a spinning blue ball. A spinning blue ball that had 4 large, white, spinning blades, and it made a screeching sound as the blades spun. "I can't let that hit me!" Tensing, the fallen angel dodged as the blonde threw the ball, grinning as he missed. Kokubil's smile diminished as Naruto clenched his fist. "Expand," Naruto said aloud. Kokubil felt a white-hot pain hit his right arm, and he screamed in agony as the ball expanded and exploded, dozens of tiny blades of wind striking his arm and tearing it to pieces. Gasping as he finally finished, Kokubil grabbed his right shoulder, his entire right arm, all the way down to his missing shoulder. Grunting in agony and pain, Kokubil held his hand over his wound, gasping as he lost blood. "Surrender," Naruto spoke. "I have no wish to kill you. Please, just surrender," Naruto said grimly. Snarling in anger, the fallen angel glared at the blonde with a mad gleam in his eyes. "Never! War! War must begin again! How else? How else am I supposed to gleefully kill demons and angels?" Kokubil screamed madly. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto briefly closed them as he frowned. "I see, you're nothing more than a mad, war-hungry dog," he spoke solemnly. Forming another Raisin Shuriken in his hands, Naruto frowned briefly. "I don't like this." The blonde threw the Raisin Shuriken toward the fallen angel. Kokubil snorted, staring at the spinning sphere hurtling toward him. "The war will begin if not by me, then by someone else," he muttered. When the Raisin Shuriken struck him, Kokubil felt a sharp, white-hot pain, before all he knew was darkness. Looking at the spot Kokubil once occupied, Naruto sighed solemnly. Grabbing a quill pen, Naruto squeezed it as he stuffed it into his pocket. Focusing on the Harem seal he had placed on Serafall, he pulled it, and it soon disappeared. When the blonde reappeared, Serafall engulfed him instantly, the raven-haired beauty clutching tightly to his midsection. "Narutan! I was so worried!" she exclaimed. Smiling softly, Naruto patted her head, tilting her head as his hand caressed her cheek. "No need to worry, Kokubil is no longer a problem and your little sister is safe." Smiling happily as her eyes shone with tears of relief and joy, Serafall stood on her tiptoes. Naruto lowered his head as their lips met in a soft, meaningful kiss. The two ignored Lady Citri's squeal as she took a picture, Lord Citri shaking his head in mild amusement. Pulling apart, Naruto noticed a gleam in Serafall's eyes. As a magic circle with the Leviathan symbol appeared below them, Naruto swore he saw Serafall lick her lips as her eyes glowed with lust and love as they teleported away. Appearing once more in a different room, Naruto noticed that they were still in the Citri mansion, except they were specifically in Serafall's room. Blinking, Naruto was caught off guard when Serafall pushed him onto the bed, straddling his form as she kissed him for a moment. "I think Naruto deserves a reward for saving my little sister." The purple-eyed Mao purred softly in his ear. "I can't wait, I've wanted to do this for so long," she whispered seductively in his ear, once again capturing the blonde's lips in a steamy, hot kiss. The blonde returned it, Naruto absent-mindedly noting the fact that their articles of clothing were slowly disappearing from their bodies, their bare skin melting against each other as Serafall's curves melded perfectly with the blonde's figure. Soon, the mansion fell completely silent. The maids, menservants, guards, even Lady and Lord Citri, stopped what they were doing when several muffled noises came from Serafall's bedroom. The sounds included things like moans and cries of pleasure. From those sounds, they could hear a few muffled words. Those words included, "It feels so good. Oh! By the Mao! Harder! Faster! Deeper!" and the ever-famous, "I'm coming!" By the time 20 minutes had passed, all the servants' faces were redder than a tomato as they all searched for earplugs, sighing in relief when they no longer heard the sounds of Serafall doing the dance with her special someone. Lord and Lady Citri could only cry animate tears as they began brainstorming names for their future grandchildren. However, they later comically cried tears over the fact that the servants were all using earplugs. They settled for placing paper towels over their ears so they wouldn't hear their daughter tangoing with her future son-in-law. However, it didn't stop them from sharing notes about the names of their future grandchildren. "So that was Baochu's older brother?" Issei, a pawn of Rias and the wielder of the Red Dragon Emperor, muttered. Earlier today, Issei had met his king's older brother. To say he was surprised was an understatement. The older man looked a lot like Rias. "Indeed it was," Sona replied, walking beside Issei as Rias smiled at her pawn. The black-haired class representative looked at Issei with a stern gaze. "Consider yourself lucky, Issei. You first glimpsed Surzex when he crashed Rias's wedding. Today you officially met him. Not many devils have that honor. Remember that." "So Sona, how is your peerage?" Rias asked, changing the topic of conversation. "They're fine, though Sanji has been quite eager to prove he's better than Issei," Sona replied, frowning slightly at her pawn's overly jealous attitude. "Sanji is certainly unique," Rias offered. Issei snorted. "A closet pervert is more like it," the brown-haired boy declared. "And being an open pervert is better?" Sona replied lightly. "At least I can be open with my desires," Issei shouted proudly, causing several students to glare at him venomously. Rias simply laughed at her pawn while Sona smiled slightly. The three continued walking through the hallways, bumping into Sona's queen, Tsubaki, and Rias's queen, Akino, along the way. Smiling, the group continued their walk through the hallways, the students splitting up while giving Issei subtle glances. "Sona-tan!" a voice shouted, causing everyone to freeze as Sona paled slightly in horror. Turning, they all saw the face of a smaller girl running towards them. She had black hair like Sona's, but hers was longer and held in two pigtails. Purple eyes slightly brighter than Sona's, and unlike Sona, a more generous pair of breasts, and she was dressed in a magical girl outfit. All the students murmured amongst themselves about who the new arrival was. Sona paled further, while Rias simply laughed, Akino joining her while Tsubaki sighed as Issei looked on in confusion. Approaching Sona, Serafall clung to her sister, smiling brightly as she hugged her. "Sona-tan!" Catching her breath, Sona gasped slightly. "Owani-sama! What are you doing here? I wanted to see my little sister!" Serafall happily exclaimed. Hearing that, Issei and the rest of the students gasped. "Sister!" At that moment, Sona saw something surprising about her sister. For a brief moment, Sona saw her sister ignore the other demons around her and look at the students, human students, sourly, a small hint of disgust. However, as quickly as it appeared, it disappeared. Blinking, Sona ignored it, shrugging it off as nothing. As for Serafall, the black-haired beauty had to stop the bitter feelings she felt from growing stronger. But she couldn't help the bitter feelings toward the humans gathered around her. Humans who had wronged Naruto. She knew it was foolish that the humans who had wronged Naruto had been gone for over millions of years. However, that didn't stop the feeling from growing. Instead, she focused on her sister, smiling brightly at Sona. Looking over the other devils, she smiled brightly at Tsubaki, Akino, and Rias. She tilted her head slightly when she saw Issei, idly wondering who he was before remembering Rias had a new pawn. So, is that Hyoko Ike? Or was it Hyaku Isabu? She idly wondered. Issei suddenly felt the urge to cry anime tears. He didn't know why, so he settled for simply staring at Serafall and comparing the girl to Sona. Owani-sama. Can you let me go? Sona asked, feeling embarrassed as she remained in her sister's arms. Blinking, Serafall let go of her sister. Sona sighed in relief, smiling brightly. Serafall bounced on the balls of her feet. Sona-tan. There's someone special I want you to meet, she said happily. Blinking, Sona and Rias wondered who Serafall was talking about while Akino, Tsubaki, and Issei tilted their heads in curiosity. Oh? Who is this someone, Wani-sama? Sona asked curiously. Smiling happily, Serafall looked back, cupping her mouth. Naruto! You may enter now! Serafall yelled. The students were surprised by her loud voice. Moments after her shout, the doors at the end of the hallway opened and Naruto's form strolled down the silent hallway. Male students glared at him venomously, muttering about how another pretty boy was moving into their territory. All the female students stared at the blonde hunk with hearts in their eyes, drooling slightly. Rias, Sona, her queens, and Issei could only stare at the blonde in disbelief, recognizing him as the one who saved their lives from Kokabile. Continuing his casual pace, Naruto stopped next to Serafall, smiling at the two kings. Smiling brightly, Serafall clung to the blonde. Sona-tan meets Naruto-tan, Naruto-tan meets Sona-tan, she said happily. Nice to officially meet you, Sona. Naruto spoke, his voice filled with mischievous charm. A pleasure to meet you, Sona said politely, a hint of caution in her eyes. Rias frowned slightly beside Sona, not trusting the man, but if he was in Serafall's company, then he should at least be trustworthy. Wani-sama, who exactly is he? Sona asked. Smiling happily, Serafall gained a glimmer in her eyes as Naruto spoke. My full name is Naruto Uzumaki, Sona. As for who exactly I am, the blonde trailed off. Smiling widely, Serafall took charge. Placing a hand on Naruto's cheek, to everyone's surprise, Serafall surprised them even more when she tilted her head, the blonde meeting her halfway as they shared a small kiss. Pulling apart after a few moments, Naruto and Serafall looked at the shocked faces of Sona, Rias, and their respective peerage members. The human students all looked shocked as well. Naruto-tan is going to be your brother-in-law, Sona-tan! Serafall exclaimed happily, dropping the bombshell. She was silent for several long moments. The sentence takes a while to register. When it finally did, there was only one response. Eehee! Chapter 2. Naruto-tan is going to be your brother-in-law, So-tan! Those words, that phrase, it froze Sona Citri's brain. Outside, she had a blank expression on her face as everyone else loudly announced their surprise. Inwardly, however, it was a different story. The gears in his head were turning at a pace he'd never seen before, his brain trying and failing to grasp the situation. Naruto-tan is going to be your brother-in-law, So-tan! Doesn't compute. It does not compute. Danger. Your brain is in danger of being fried, suggested Action. Turn off your brain for the cooling process. Do you want to continue? Confirmed. The cooling process begins momentarily. Turn off all brain functions. Closes at 3, 2, 1. Shutdown starting. Reboot in progress. Please wait. Hard reset. Replay of last known message. Naruto-tan is going to be your brother-in-law, So-tan. Computing. Error. Cannot calculate correctly. Delete all minor information to calculate correctly. The names of new students who recently joined the school will be deleted, along with data containing documents that had been previously signed for the beginning. Delete entire process. Calculating last known message successfully calculated. Now activating appropriate response protocols. Back in the outside world, Serafall still clung to Naruto's arm as she smiled happily in amusement at the other's response. Almost everyone looked like a fish out of water due to her literally dropping the bomb. The black-haired Mao nearly burst when she saw Rias's expression. Gremory's facial expression showed her surprise. The redhead's eyes were wide, almost like shining white plates. His pupils looked like tiny pinpoints. His mouth hung from his jaw. Serafall was sure it hung lower. His jaw might have dropped. Akino had a similar expression. The only difference was that her smile seemed frozen on her face. Rias's pawn, Isen, or was it Iken, looked like he was being repeatedly shocked by lightning magic. His eyes wide as can go as his jaw literally hit the floor. Tsubaki, her beloved sister's queen, looked like a fish out of water, and Serafall almost laughed when a bit of drool leaked from her lips. However, Serafall was more curious about Sona's reaction. Her little sister still hadn't changed her expression, instead wearing a blank expression. She tilted her head slightly, wondering if she had broken her sister in the process. Thud. Oh wait, her little sister fainted. Thud. Oh, looks like Rias joined her too. Serafall stared at her sister and Rias's unconscious form for a moment before looking at Naruto. Naruto had mirth dancing in his eyes, and Serafall knew he was trying not to burst out laughing. The blonde looked up at her, meeting her gaze, and that was all it took for the dam to explode. Throwing their heads back, the duo laughed uncontrollably. Naruto fell backward, laughing loudly as tears of joy formed in his eyes. Moments later, Serafall fell onto the blonde's chest, laughing as she held her sides. Her pink hat slipped off as she let her staff fall to the ground. After several moments of the two laughing, they finally calmed down. Soon? Serafall asked with a small smile, catching her breath. Too much for soon. We should have made it easier for them. Naruto replied, laughing happily. He and Serafall shared a cheerful, childish giggle before sharing a small kiss. With a small smile, Naruto stood up, lifting Serafall as he did so. The raven-haired beauty squealed as she wrapped her legs around his waist for balance. Before Naruto pulled her to her feet, Serafall gave him a loving kiss. We need to find a private room at school, she whispered mischievously in his ear once their lips parted, giving him a suggestive wink. Naruto blushed slightly, but chuckled. So bold, he whispered huskily, licking his lips before pulling her to her feet. With her small frame, Serafall had to look up at the blonde, and she pouted cutely at his latest provocation. She crossed her arms over her breasts, making them look unintentionally larger, while her purple eyes sparkled as she grimaced. Naruto chuckled, taking his pink hat off the floor. He dusted himself off and placed it on her head. You're so adorable when you pout like that, Sarah-chan, he told her, giving her a loving kiss as he placed her staff back in her hands. Serafall smiled brightly, bouncing joyfully on the balls of her feet while humming a childish tune. The female human students had recovered from their shock a while ago, and all squealed at the affectionate and caring display. Once again, as Serafall heard the humans' astonished murmurs and whispers, she felt a burst of irritation and disgust. The bitter feeling toward humans igniting in her heart once more. She subdued the feeling once more, telling herself that hating the current generation of humans wouldn't solve anything. But she didn't believe she would ever be able to protect humans as eagerly as she did in the past. Fortunately, her thought process was interrupted when Naruto spoke. Well, Sarah-chan, I don't think we can leave Rias-chan and Sona-chan here in the hallway. What do you say we take them to the council room until they wake up? That way we can answer their questions in a private setting, Naruto said. Nodding, Serafall smiled brightly. Akino-chan! Tsubaki-chan! Isen-chan! Take Rias-chan and Sotan to the council room for us, she ordered. Akino and Tsubaki, still in shock, followed his orders without hesitation. Issei, however, my name is Issei, he exclaimed. Serafall ignored them, instead taking Naruto by the arm. Narutan, come on! I'll give you a little tour of the school, she exclaimed happily. And maybe you'll find a nice empty room, she muttered to herself. Laughing, Naruto allowed herself to be dragged along, ignoring Issei as he cried anime tears. For a long time, Serafall excitedly dragged Naruto along, giving him a tour of Kuo. She excitedly pointed out things for him, the various classes, and the many lessons each class taught. Naruto listened intently, interest dancing in his eyes. In his time, the only things taught at the academy were basic advanced mathematics, history, writing, and the shinobi arts. Naruto found it all so interesting. There were now classes in cooking, drawing, technology, and many other things he couldn't name. It made him smile, knowing that the children of the next generation were being taught many useful skills. Currently, the pair were walking down an empty hallway, Serafall smiling brightly as she clung to his arm. Naruto smiled at her, before he was startled when she suddenly dragged him to the nurse's room, which was currently empty since the nurse was out for the day. The blonde was confused when Serafall left him on one of the beds in the nurse's room. "Wait here," Serafall told him, laughing at his confusion. She disappeared into the room's closet, and Naruto decided to entertain himself by examining the room. In all honesty, the room reminded the blonde of any other normal hospital room. The only difference was that it had a much more comfortable feel, and the walls were light blue instead of white. Hearing the closet door open, Naruto looked over and his eyes widened. Leaning against the doorframe was Serafall, wearing a nurse's outfit that looked smaller on her. Even though she was wearing clothes that were obviously not her size, she still looked absolutely stunning. Stunning and delicious. With desire in her eyes, Serafall took sensual steps toward the motionless blonde, who could only stare at her. Upon reaching the bed, Serafall sensually crawled onto Naruto's lap. Her purple eyes shone with desire, love, and lust. "Naruto looks sick," she whispered, licking her lips as she looked into the blonde's eyes. "It's a good thing the magical nurse Leviathan is here to take care of you," she said suggestively. She gently blew her breath on Naruto's neck, wrapping her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck. Smiling, Naruto continued playing. "I'll be in your care, Leviathan," he murmured, gently placing his lips on her neck. Feeling her cheeks heat up, Serafall allowed Naruto to kiss her neck. Moments later, she used her hand to lift Naruto's face towards hers. At first, they shared a soft kiss before it gradually heated up. Feeling Naruto's tongue brush against her lips, Serafall opened her mouth. It wasn't long before their tongues began to play, tender muscles wrapping around and exploring each other's mouths. Moaning, Serafall began to remove Naruto's shirt, their lips temporarily separating before coming together again. She idly noticed Naruto place a hand on the floor and a ceiling array enveloping the room. She could make out the kanji for silence, and smiled happily into the kiss. Gently pushing his body so he was lying flat on the bed, Serafall smiled lovingly at the blonde as she once again connected their mouths. Naruto removed the nurse's shirt, and moments later, her pants and skirt respectively joined the small pile of clothes on the floor. It was fortunate that Naruto had placed a seal that made the room soundproof. Otherwise, many lessons would have been interrupted that day. Sona Citri let out a groan as she regained consciousness. Her mind immediately began racing with reasons why she was unconscious. Dozens of thoughts flew in and out of her head in nanoseconds. Finally, she found the memory of what led to her being unconscious, and her eyes shot open as she sat up in an instant. "Well, looks like you're finally awake," a male voice said to her left, amusement in his tone. "Tantan's up!" "Yay!" Slowly turning her head, Sona froze as her purple eyes took in the scene in front of her. Sitting in a chair was the same blonde, Naruto Uzumaki, as she remembered. Serafall, a Mao, and her sister settled on Naruto's lap. His arms wrapped around the blonde's neck. Serafall bounced on Naruto's lap a few times before jumping off, landing on her feet and wrapping her sister in a hug. "So Tan's awake!" she called out happily. Sona felt the air knocked out of her lungs. "Wani-sama, I need air!" Sona gasped. Laughing, Naruto placed a hand on Serafall's head, drawing the raven-haired beauty's attention. "Sara-chan, I'm pretty sure your sister needs air to live," she told her. Laughing shyly, Serafall released her sister, Sona gasping as her lungs took greedy gulps of air. Once she recovered, Sona looked at the smiling duo, before sighing. May I have an explanation, please? But before that, would you mind telling me why the council chamber is empty? She said, rubbing her temples. Certainly. Naruto chuckled, and Serafall pulled her back onto his lap. She snuggled into his warmth, sighing contentedly as she rubbed her cheeks. Watching their interaction, Sona felt uneasy. For starters, Rias woke up 30 minutes before you. She didn't really say anything, just walked out of the room with a blank expression, muttering that she was dreaming the whole time. The blonde began. Sona nodded slightly, not surprised by Rias's actions. To be honest, she thought she was dreaming. Why is the room empty? Well, your peerage was causing quite the scene when Sarah-chan and I burst in unannounced. Eventually, Serafall hit, what was it called again? Sanji on the head with her staff for being rude to her. After that, your peerage was almost ready to hit us with it. Like this, Naruto stopped, looking behind Sona. Sona turned and blinked buffalo-like as she witnessed the sight of her peerage lying on the ground. Their mouths opened as they drooled slightly. With her vision, Sona could detect seals made of ink embedded in the necks of her peerage. And she recognized the kanji for sleep written within the seals. I had to put them to sleep. Naruto finished. He ignored Serafall as he ran his fingers through her hair. Sona sighed as she turned to the blonde and rubbed her temples again. Just finish your explanation of how and why you're in a relationship with me, sister. She murmured tiredly. Naruto shrugged slightly. Fair enough. Serafall and I met shortly after the Great War ended. From there, Naruto and Serafall told Sona about their first meeting. How Serafall accidentally found the barrier he had erected in the center of a clearing. How she was somehow able to get past the barrier. Something Naruto was still trying to figure out. How Serafall first found him asleep beneath a sakura tree, and how he awoke to find her sitting across from him, humming a cheerful tune. They explained to Sona how wary Naruto was of her at first, but then told her how quickly Naruto warmed up to her after spending a few minutes with her. The first day they spent together, and the amount of fun they had talking together, and sometimes the occasional spar. They told her that, at first, they were very good friends for a long time, spanning almost 3 centuries. After the first century, Serafall's feelings for Naruto began to change into something more. Serafall told Sona that she still didn't act on those feelings because she was so busy having recently obtained the position of Mao. She told her sister that after finally settling her position, she was actually contemplating revealing her feelings to Naruto, but couldn't. Once again, it was necessary as it was one of her responsibilities to maintain the fragile peace between the 3 fractions on the devil's side. She told him again that she felt she was ready to reveal her feelings, but that she was born and that she had to focus on being the best older sister she could be. Finally, she told Sona that almost a month ago she finally revealed her feelings and that she couldn't be happier. Similarly, Naruto spoke to her side, telling Sona that Serafall was a very fun person, and that she had quickly become one of his best friends. He explained that after spending so much time together with her, he fell in love with her, but never acted on those feelings. Believing that Serafall had enough stress as it was, finally, they concluded their story with how they got together. Looking at the happy couple, Sona had a blank look on her face. However, Serafall and Naruto could see the quirk on Sona's lips as she gave them a small smile. I see I'm happy for you, Wani-sama and Ooni-sama, Sona said, blushing in embarrassment. Squealing, Serafall pounced on her sister, enveloping her in a tight hug as her body overflowed with boundless joy. Sona sighed, but didn't resist her sister. Instead, she slowly raised her arms and blushed in embarrassment as she briefly returned her sister's hug. Releasing the hug, Serafall smiled, and Sona coughed in an attempt to save face. She failed when Naruto placed a hand on her head, ruffling her hair lightly. Well, you know about me. How about I learn more about you, Matu? Naruto said warmly as Serafall placed a soft kiss on his cheek, smiling brightly as she gestured for Sona to comply. That day, Sona learned what it was like to have an older brother, and I had to say I didn't see why Rias complained so much about her brother. The room was relatively quiet as all the occupants waited for the final few members of their meeting. To the right of the large table, placed in the center of the room, were 2 blondes, a woman and a man, respectively. Both had blue eyes, and both had a peaceful aura about them. Sitting in the middle of the table was a rather handsome man. He had neck-length black hair with yellow highlights, his red eyes glowing slightly as he gave a lazy smile. Sitting next to him was a young man dressed in a black suit. The young man had silver-gray hair and gray eyes with a blue tint that glowed slightly. He wore a carefree smile, but there was something dangerous about that smile. To the left of the table, 4 other figures sat. One had shoulder-length crimson hair and tortoise-colored eyes. Behind him was a woman in a maid's uniform. She had silver hair, with matching silver eyes. Sitting next to the red-haired man was another man. This one had shoulder-length black hair and blue eyes that scanned everyone in the room cautiously. His arms were crossed, and he was lightly tapping his elbow. The last occupant was another man. This one had dark brown, almost black, neck-length hair. His hair was messy, though a bit untamed. His forest green hair was the most prominent feature, his hand tilting up while he banged the table with his other hand. Moments later, the door to the room opened, and Rias Gremory and her peerage entered. Following that, Sona entered, her peerage following her. "We're not late, are we?" Rias asked worriedly. The red-haired man, who bore a striking resemblance to Rias when the two were together, spoke. "No. You're not your little sister later. Just take a seat wherever you see fit." "Thank you, Anai-sama," she said with a smile. Her older brother, Serzex, smiled happily at his younger sister. Looking at Sona and Rias, along with their peerages, they took a seat. Ajuka spoke. "It seems almost everyone is here. All we need now is Serafall." He looked at the empty chair next to Serzex, and then at the other empty chair next to that one. "I still don't understand why you requested another chair. Especially on the condition that that chair be placed next to yours." He muttered in confusion. Serzex hummed thoughtfully. "Maybe she wanted a place to rest her legs," he offered. "Perhaps she's bringing a guest?" Grafia asked. "Knowing her, she'll probably bring someone," Falbio said casually. Azazel chuckled, the sound echoing through the room. "Makes you wonder who he's bringing, doesn't it?" he said with a smile. "I must admit I'm quite curious. I also wonder what my rival is doing." The blonde woman, Gabriel, muttered to herself. Her brother, the Archangel and current leader of Heaven, Michael, hummed lightly. "To be honest, I stopped questioning Serafall's motives a long time ago. She's just so confusing to me," he admitted sheepishly. Ajuka snorted. "Both you and I stopped trying to understand her a long time ago. I haven't had a headache since." Falbium nodded in agreement with Ajuka's assessment. Azazel laughed while the others laughed briefly. "Serafall-sama is still late. And that is unacceptable," Grafia interrupted sternly. "I wonder where she could be," the silver-haired maiden murmured. Rias tried to speak, but the red-haired Gremory couldn't, as Sona placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Looking into each other's eyes, a silent conversation took place between the two. "Don't say a word, Rias." "Why not? My sister asked me to keep the subject of her and Naruto quiet until she arrived." "Really, why?" "She wants it to be a surprise. Besides, can you imagine the leaders of the 3 fractions with such dumbfounded expressions?" There was a glint in Sona's eyes. A mischievous glint. And it made Rias blink in surprise. She thought about it, and realized she would pay to see the shocked expressions on everyone's faces. A glint similar to Sona's appeared in Rias's eyes, and the red-haired girl smiled as she leaned back in her chair. Falbium noticed their exchange, and he raised an eyebrow curiously. The leaders of their respective factions continued talking in low voices, discussing mundane matters until Serafall arrived. After several more minutes of waiting, their small conversation came to a halt when they heard 2 voices outside the room steadily approaching. "I still can't believe this is considered formal wear. I would have preferred a formal kimono and this restriction," a decidedly male voice said. Another voice answered, one the others recognized as Serafall. "But I think you look great in a tuxedo." "I'm not saying it doesn't look good," the man replied. "I'm just saying it's restrictive. I feel like I'm walking as stiff as a board." "It's just for today, Narutan. Please be patient," Serafall asked. "It's okay. I just hope I don't have to wear something like this again in the future." "Yay! Narutan is always so compromising." Serafall cheered. The male chuckled. Is this the door, Sarah-chan? Yes. Yes. I hope we're not late. With that, the door opened, and everyone's eyes focused on the two new occupants of the room. Serafall was wearing a suit and tie, and she still looked as beautiful as ever, even in formal attire. The other person was someone only a few in the room were familiar with. His spiky golden hair reminded some of the Phoenix clan, but they could tell he wasn't Phoenix. His sapphire blue eyes shone with curiosity and warmth. Most curious were the 3 whisker marks on his cheeks. He was wearing a black tuxedo with an orange bow tie. He looked a little uncomfortable, as evidenced by the fact that he was tugging at the collar of his tuxedo. His arrival caused Riasa's peerage to tense slightly. Kaneko was the most affected as she looked at the blonde with caution and a hint of awe. The senjutsu she felt from him relaxed her even if she didn't want to be relaxed. Sona's peerage remained unaffected, as Sona explained the situation to them once they regained consciousness. Sorry we're late, everyone! Serafall exclaimed happily, smiling slightly. Serafall! Ajuka greeted. I'm glad to see you made it. If I may ask, who is the man with you? He asked. Naruto stepped forward, bowing slightly as he spoke. Greetings, it is an honor to meet the esteemed leaders of the 3 fractions. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Narutan is my queen! Serafall declared bluntly as Naruto finished his introduction. Everyone blinked. What? Serzex asked in surprise, echoing everyone's surprise. Even Azazel was shocked, the black-haired fallen angel blinking as he processed the information. The entire room fell silent as Serafall and Naruto shared a brief kiss. Their gazes slowly widened until they resembled nothing more than dinner plates. He's my fiancé too! Serafall continued cheerfully, once again dropping the bombshell on an unprepared audience. The silence lasted a full 5 seconds until it was broken by the sound of 2 dull thuds. Those 2 thuds were the sound of Gabriel and Grafia fainting from shock. With wide eyes, Ajuka opened and closed his mouth. For the first time in his life, he was truly speechless and couldn't form a coherent thought. Serzex had a blank look on his face, as if he just heard that his little sister had grown up and had a child. He was completely numb, and slowly slid down from his chair until he soon joined his wife on the floor. Falbium's eyes were wide open, his mouth agape as the sentence tried to resend itself in his head. Once it did, the only response he could muster was random, incoherent gibberish. Azazel blinked rapidly, before giving a somewhat shaky smile as he leaned back, trying to regain his composure. He wasn't doing a very good job of it. Valis simply blinked, but you could clearly see the surprise in his eyes. Finally, Michael, let's just say he looked like he just discovered one of his priests was a closet pervert. Serafall and Naruto burst out laughing, hugging each other as they laughed. Rias could only laugh, and the rest of her peerage could only stand in shock. With the exception of Akino and Issei, who already knew, Sona kept a straight face as her peerage laughed, but her trembling shoulders and the slight quirk of her lips gave her away. Almost 30 minutes passed until everyone finally recovered. Serafall and Naruto were content to sit next to each other, Serafall holding her hand over Naruto's as they held it under the table. The first to speak was Ajuka. Serafall, is this man your fiancé and queen? Ajuka asked, still trying to wrap her head around it. Serafall nodded eagerly. If you made her your queen, that means you finally used the set of evil pieces I gave you, he affirmed. Again, Serafall nodded. What's so special about the evil set you gave him? Azazel asked. Sighing, Ajuka debated mentally in his head, before finally deciding to explain. As everyone knows, all evil pieces have a certain limit based on the being's value. If the value is high, more pieces are used. If a being proves too strong, it is impossible for the evil piece to reincarnate them. Even if that piece is a mutated piece, he told them. The others nodded, they already knew. However, the original sets of evil pieces I created, the first 4 I distributed to Serzex, me, Falbium, and Serafall, they have no limits. The eyes of everyone besides the 4 Mao and Naruto widened in shock. Why don't they have limits? Michael asked. When we needed to increase the demon population, and I started creating the evil piece system, I didn't really have limits in mind when I designed them. When I distributed the first 4 sets, Falbium was the one who pointed out the floor of distributing unlimited pieces to other demons. Demons are naturally selfish beings, also greedy and arrogant. It was Falbium's concern that demons would seek out beings much stronger than themselves and foolishly try to force them into their peers. Such actions would kill them immediately, further reducing the demon population. Ajuka explained. It was a few weeks later that I corrected the system, and pieces with certain limits were set. The fact that only 4 sets of limitless evil pieces existed was kept a closely guarded secret among the Mao. Ajuka concluded. I see. Michael murmured, Gabriel trembling slightly as he imagined less savory demons gaining their hands on all the powerful beings. Azazel whistled in astonishment. Damn, you demons are full of surprises, aren't you? Beside him, Valis smiled. Falbium shrugged before noticing Syzex staring at Naruto. Is something wrong, Sirzex? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Everyone's attention turned to Sirzex, and Naruto raised an eyebrow at the sight of Sirzex staring at him. Sirzex bid farewell to Falbium. It's nothing, really. It's just I never thought Sarah was the type to rob a cradle, he commented with amusement. Azazel smiled, seeing where Sirzex was going with this. Yeah, she's like what? A little over 300 years old? That's definitely robbing the cradle, he said with a mocking smile. Everyone seemed to find something funny in that sentence, but they all blinked in confusion when instead of Serafall pouting, or Naruto blushing, the pair burst out laughing. The sudden burst of their laughter made everyone blink and frown in confusion. When Naruto and Serafall finished laughing, Sirzex was the one who asked the question. What's funny? He asked. Sorry, but what you just said was quite funny. Naruto chuckled. If anyone is the cradle robber in this relationship, it's Narutan. Serafall said. How can he be the cradle robber in this situation? Ajuka asked with a raised eyebrow. I'm over millions of years old. I was alive before the angels, demons, and fallen angels were born. Naruto replied with a smile. The room was completely silent. The younger demons were trying to come to terms with the fact that someone could live so long. The older generation stared, their brains registering the fact that this man lived before their kind. I can definitely see what the cradle robber looks like, Azazel murmured with a smile. If you've really been alive this long, the stories you must have, you're practically a walking artifact. Falbio uttered, Ajuka's eyes flickering slightly at the thought of knowing a time before the 3 factions existed. Truly amazing. Sirzex and Michael murmured, Is it possible to live that long? Gabriel wondered in amazement, and others shared his thought. What Narutan says is true, Serafall confirmed, clinging to the blonde. As much as I'd love to swap stories with all of you, Naruto said amusedly, I think you have a rather important meeting to hold, he hinted. That made everyone laugh shyly. You have a point. As the leader of the angels, I'm ready to begin. Michael spoke up. I'm ready to start too. Azazel followed easily. And we, the form Mao of the underworld, are ready to begin. Sirzex followed, the rest of the Mao nodding in agreement. Naruto leaned back in his chair, content to watch the meeting progress. He never really enjoyed politics that much. It was true that he had longed to become Hokage when he was younger. However, during the centuries he spent watching over Kaguya while she slept in the seal, he could only do 2 things: train and think. And that was what he did for those millions of years. He simply trained and thought. He trained until his body collapsed into exhaustion, and thought until he collapsed into mental exhaustion. He created new techniques and mastered them in time. He thought about all his failings, his past, present, and sometimes future. After his first century of watching over Kaguya, he considered his desire to become Hokage. And he eventually decided that the politics that came with the job would be something he disliked immensely. He was always a straightforward type of person. He preferred to talk sense to people, or make sense to them, or talk and make sense to them. That was how he always did things, and it worked for him. He couldn't come up with complex plans like Shikamaru that left him 10 to 5 steps ahead of you. He preferred to come up with plans on the fly, making it up as he went. While being Hokage was about being the strongest shinobi in the village, it was also about politics. And during his time as a genin, he saw the problems that most politics caused, with Doto being a prime example. So being Hokage was something he decided, while achievable, was something he wouldn't want to deal with. Thinking back on it now, Naruto wondered. How was everything after the debacle with Kagaya ended? He decided not to think about it. Everything was in the past now, and he could only look toward the future. He looked at Serafall, who was participating in the conversation between the faction leaders. He smiled faintly at the beautiful girl. As long as Serafall was with him, he assumed the future would be bright no matter what. She was the one who found him, saved him from his loneliness. Her bright, carefree personality always lifted his mood. It was practically impossible not to be happy with Serafall around. He looked around the room. He examined the leaders of the three factions, and saw something that made him smile. It was true that they were all warriors who had taken part in taking lives and participating in war. But what made him smile was the look in their eyes. The look of determination. Determination for peace. He was well hidden, and it took him a moment to see him. But the desire was there. The desire for peace was strong in his eyes. It was at that moment Naruto knew that no matter what happened at this meeting, peace would bear fruit. That made Naruto happy. However, the one next to Azazel, Vali, he meant Naruto. The blonde could tell the silver-haired boy loved to fight. Of that Naruto was absolutely certain. So Naruto was a little worried. Will his love of fighting prevent him from wanting peace? Only time would tell. He looked at the younger occupants in the room. Rias and her peerage were paying full attention to the meeting. However, Issei had a slightly confused look in his eyes. Naruto laughed softly. Hearing his laughter, Serafall turned her attention to him. A thin eyebrow raised in curiosity. Naruto gave her a smile, squeezing her hand, silently conveying that everything was fine. The black-haired girl gave him a bright, loving smile before returning her attention to the meeting. Her face transformed into a focused, serious expression. With Serafall turning her attention back to the meeting, Naruto looked at Sona and her peerage. Like Rias, Sona's full attention was focused on the meeting taking place. Her ears picked up every word spoken, her eyes took in every detail. Naruto smiled. It seemed that Shikamaru's excellent mind was inherited by the young Citri. His companions were also paying close attention to the meeting, though some shifted uncomfortably. Why don't we ask the younger generation what they think? Naruto heard Serzex suggest. Blinking, Naruto paid more attention. It seemed Serzex wanted the opinions of the younger generation watching the meeting. When Naruto heard everyone give their answers, Naruto smiled, though when they got to Issei, Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, I don't really know. I mean, sorry, I can't really understand it. He laughed sheepishly. Think of it like Issei-kun. Azazel began with an amused smile. If there's war, you can't have Hex with Rias and have children. If there's peace, you can have Hex all you want. He explained in a rather unique way. Rias's eyes widened comically, and she had a blush all over her face. The others around her were laughing at her misfortune. Peace! I want peace! That way I can have Hex with Bucho! Issei exclaimed hurriedly. Naruto blinked and looked up at the ceiling. Ero-sensei, your legacy lives on, which is unsettling. He thought, sending his silent prayers to Jiraiya. He idly wondered if Issei was going to write books and call them the Ika series. What about you, Vali? Azazel asked. Naruto paid more attention to this. Vali shrugged. I don't really care either way. As long as I have strong people to fight, I'm fine, he replied. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That answer was too vague to be an answer. And you, Naruto-san? What's your opinion? Azazel asked. The other turned to the blonde, waiting for his answer. Of course, Serafall already knew his answer, and she smiled at him. A rather pointless question, Azazel-san. I have and always wish for peace. Naruto replied with a smile. So it's been decided. Serzex spoke. Peace between our factions will exist, and hopefully last for centuries, he said with a smile. Amen to that. Azazel agreed. Before the celebrations could take place, it seemed as if time froze, and everyone was frozen in place. What's going on? Issei wondered in panic. Could it be that Gasper's sacred gear activated? Rias wondered, concern and surprise in her tone. How interesting. Naruto muttered, staying in his seat. How are we not affected? Rias wondered in shock. I'm not sure why either. Can you explain Gasper's sacred gear to me? It stops everything in its field of vision. But it can't be controlled, and it happens randomly. Rias was quick to explain. Maybe Gasper didn't want us to be affected by his scare team. Naruto theorized. I also sense dozens of presences getting closer and closer here. Naruto added. How could they have converged so close to us without us knowing? Rias wondered. I've sensed them gathering for quite some time. Naruto said, snapping his fingers in front of an unresponsive Azazel. Why didn't you say something earlier? Rias demanded. I was curious to know what they were doing. If I had known what they were planning, I would have confronted them. Why aren't you worried? Issei snapped. Because the situation can be easily remedied. Naruto replied. How? Rias asked in confusion. It happened in an instant. One moment, Naruto was sitting calmly in his chair. The next, Issei and Rias screamed as a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, doors opening and closing. What? Rias muttered in shock. The blonde was no longer in the room. The sudden gust of wind had returned, and with its arrival, Naruto appeared again, the blonde carefully leaving a surprised and somewhat scared Gasper. Rias looked at Naruto in shock and disbelief. Jay, how fast are you? She asked in a daze, Issei agreeing with her as he gaped at her. We have more pressing concerns. Naruto stated. Hello Gasper, I'm Naruto. Do you think you can reverse the effects of your sacred gear? He asked kindly. Why yes. Gasper stammered, anxious. The little blonde boy's eyes lit up and everyone blinked. What just happened? And why is Gasper here? Surzex asked in confusion. The others shared his confusion. There's no time to explain. We're under attack, Rias announced grimly. Everyone tensed. For whom, really? Michael asked. And why? Who would want to interfere with our peace conference? He questioned. Those who don't wish for peace to exist, Naruto said, his mouth set in a thin line. It seems most of those around us are humans. There are very few demons, angels, and fallen ones as well. They're numbering in the hundreds now. Their number has increased. He muttered. Serafall felt a pang of hatred. Her mind automatically compared them to the humans who mistreated her lover eons ago. Now the humans were trying to prevent peace between the three factions? Didn't they see that it was working for them since they would no longer be in danger? For the first time, Serafall wondered why God loved humans. Was it because they were his subjects? Was it because he was so loving? She didn't know, but this confirmed something for her. This confirmed that the humans of today were no better than those who harmed Naruto. What's the plan? Sona asked. We should dash. Ajuka began, but was interrupted when Naruto placed a hand on his shoulder. I'll take care of them, Naruto announced, approaching the window and looking at the hundreds of stray mages and exorcists gathered. There were also some demons, along with angels and fallen angels. Their eyes showed nothing but contempt and hatred. Are you crazy? Issei asked in shock. He was the only one, as everyone else was curious about what Naruto was capable of, while Serafall had complete confidence in Naruto, although she was worried. Crossing his arms, Naruto looked at Issei with a neutral expression. I'm sure I'm more than enough for them. To be honest, it's a little unfair, to them anyway. Is that confidence or arrogance you're talking about? Graphia asked neutrally. It's not, Naruto replied. He placed his hands on the ground, and everyone blinked as they found themselves on the roof of the building, no longer in the room they were in. That's a fact, Naruto said. With that, Naruto jumped off the roof as everyone silently watched his actions. When Naruto landed roughly on the ground, he surprised many of the many exorcists and mages around him as the smoke ominously obscured his form. When the smoke cleared, Naruto stood upright, his lips pursed as he stared neutrally at the enemies gathered before him. His once warm sapphire blue eyes were cold, shining like glaciers as he crossed his arms. I'll give you all a chance. Turn around and walk away, he told them neutrally. Don't look down on us, abomination! An exorcist responded loudly with a mocking smile. We will destroy all of you demons, and the rest of the demon lovers. The others seemed to agree, as they all sneered in Naruto's direction. I tried. Naruto spoke softly, his eyes shadowed by his bangs. Perhaps that's why Madara lost faith and peace so long ago. He murmured, let's kill this abomination, and all the other devil lovers in this city. The exorcists themselves exclaimed. The others shouted their agreement. What makes you think any of you are going to live past today? As Naruto spoke this, the Rouge mages and exorcists became alarmed upon seeing the blonde man near them. The battle began when an exorcist attempted to attack the blonde man with his sword. His life ended when Naruto quickly dodged, relieving the exorcist of his sword and stabbing the man with his own weapon. That was all it took. Dozens of exorcists wielding loaded blades, their battle cry screaming bloodlust, their desire to avenge their comrade. Frowning, Naruto leaped into action. He dodged, weaved, and avoided all their slashes and blows. Each one didn't even come close to hitting him. When Naruto dodged, he responded by punching the attacker and kicking them in the face or torso. His blows were so powerful that when he struck them in the face, some of their necks broke instantly, the sickening cracks echoing faintly. Dodging another sword strike, Naruto grabbed the offending exorcist's arms and snapped them like a pair of chopsticks. The exorcist screamed in pain, but was silenced when Naruto decapitated the man with his own weapon. Now that he had a weapon in his hands, Naruto used it well, blocking and deflecting most of the blows that attacked him. He slashed one across the back, severing the spine and causing the man to writhe in agony. He stabbed another, a woman, in the heart, killing her instantly when he pulled out the blade and deflected another blade-like shape that pierced her back. The delinquent, taken by surprise, was unable to react when Naruto grabbed him by the neck and snapped it. Using his sword, Naruto prevented another exorcist's blade from ripping into his back. The blonde sword shattered upon impact. Quickly, Naruto caught the broken blade and plunged it into the man's neck, the exorcists choking on their own blade as they fell to the ground. Not needing the handle any longer, Naruto threw it, and the handle flew at neck-snapping speeds. The handle buried itself in the head of an exorcist who was preparing to fire his sniper rifle. The rifle fired, and the bullet passed through several mages and exorcists, piercing their hearts. The bullet struck an exorcist who was carrying around C4, so when the bullet hit, it struck the explosives he was carrying. The resulting explosion killed several dozen mages and exorcists through shrapnel and the blast radius. Grenade! An exorcist shouted, throwing a grenade at the blonde. Naruto caught the grenade, quickly looked at it, and then quickly shoved it into the mouth of an exorcist closest to him. He quickly followed up by kicking the exorcist into another group of mages and exorcists. When the grenade exploded, several exorcists and mages died, their dying screams silenced. Naruto leaped through the smoke, plunging directly into a large group. He kicked a man in the face and used the man's weapons to kill him and 3 others who were closing in. We've got him! A woman shouted in a frenzy. Take him! With a battle cry, the surrounding exorcists and battle mages charged, their pointed weapons eager to taste Naruto's blood. Wind style, vacuum blast! Naruto muttered. In an instant, a great wave of wind surrounded the blonde and pushed him outward, sending the charging enemies flying. The other mages and exorcists cautiously kept their distance now, uncertainty and fear filling their minds. Naruto simply stood in the center, content to allow them to gather their courage. He didn't like fighting others when they were afraid, even if they were enemies, so he was fine with waiting for them to regain their courage. Back on the roof, everyone could only stare in shock, amazement, and a hint of fear. How can someone be so strong? Issei muttered, his eyes paralyzed. Amazing. Rias uttered. I can see how he defeated Kokubyo. Sona muttered in shock. Amazing. Michael said, no other words coming to him. Beside him, Gabriel nodded. Such skill and power. Azazel spoke. I'm glad he's on our side, he added. Beside him, Surzex and Ajuka nodded. Vali kept his eyes firmly on the blonde, a small smile of excitement on his lips. He's so strong, he muttered to himself. I definitely want to fight you, Naruto-san. Hey, where's Serafall? Falbium asked. When that question was asked, everyone murmured in confusion as they searched for the childish Mao. There! Sona pointed. Her shout caught everyone's attention, and they looked at the scene. Below, Naruto remained in position as several mages conjured several powerful fireballs. Fire! The mages launched their fireballs, and the fiery balls of flame rushed toward them. Naruto remained unconcerned, even as a wall of ice materialized around him and protected him from the flames. Once the flames died down, he sighed wearily. You didn't have to intervene, you know, he said, Serafall smiling brightly at him as she stood beside him, twirling her wand. What kind of queen and wife would I be if I let you do all the work? She asked with a wink. Fair enough. Naruto shrugged. Around him, the remaining mages and exorcists grew nervous. That's Serafall Leviathan! What is she doing here? And why is she interfering? One of the Mao? Did she just say wife? Does that mean he and she are? Hearing them, Serafall stepped forward, a serious expression on her delicate face. Listen! She cried. I've seen enough. I refuse to wait any longer while you try to harm my queen and my future husband, she exclaimed with a pout. Naruto stepped forward until he was standing next to Serafall. We make a good pair, don't we, Sarah-chan? After all, wind and ice make a dangerous combination. Serafall smiled happily. Yes. Yes. Narutan's wind will make my ice cold. As if hearing them, their respective elements came to life. The wind blew around them, their hair and clothes swaying as the wind moved. Ice began to form around them as well, the wind making the ice even colder than it originally was. The ice became so cold that a cold mist began to form around the slowly growing icicles. The previously frightened enemies gulped, and they saw the mist form as they breathed. A thin layer of violet energy surrounded Serafall, her face still holding a serious expression, while her purple hair remained resolute. Similarly, Naruto maintained a serious look as well, his arms crossed as a thin layer of bluish energy surrounded him. Idly, Naruto thought this was a bit of an exaggeration. It was more than enough, as evidenced by the annihilation it delivered. Don't get Naruto wrong, he still desired peace more than anything and hated killing more than anything. But during the years he lived, as he said, he thought a lot. One thing he decided was that the previous thinking he had when he was younger was too naive and optimistic, but he still wanted to hold on to those beliefs. Ultimately, he decided he would combine Hashirama's beliefs with Tobirama's beliefs. Hashirama believed that everyone could be kind and embrace peace. Tobirama was somewhat similar. The difference was that the Nidaime Hokage believed that enemies who threatened peace should be eliminated with extreme prejudice. There was no room for softness. Combine the two beliefs, and it makes for a rather unique and dangerous combination. Like Hashirama, Naruto gave others second chances, and sometimes thirds as well. But like Tobirama, he wouldn't hesitate to strike you down if you weren't reasonable and spit those opportunities back in his face. Anyway, Naruto alone was enough to deal with exorcists and mages. He proved that before. But when you add Serafall into the mix, it's beyond excessive. It was beyond killing at that point. And besides, with their strong love for each other, they would make sure to protect each other. Fighting one of them was enough. Fighting both of them together? That was pure suicide. The remaining exorcists and magicians seemed to understand this, and they backed away, fear in their eyes. The few spiritual beings with them mentally sighed in relief at the fact that they weren't involved in the fight. You're so useless! A female voice suddenly sounded. A moment after the voice sounded, someone else entered the battlefield. The remaining exorcists and blush mages watched in fear as she advanced, the woman with a smile on her features. She had a generous bust, and her light brown hair had a wavy appearance. Her blue-gray eyes narrowed with anger and hatred. When Serafall saw her, the female Mao's eyes softened slightly, but they hardened a moment later. Kateria Leviathan! Serafall muttered, gripping her staff tightly. Leviathan? Is she? Naruto trailed off in a murmur. Wordlessly, Serafall nodded. Yes, she is my predecessor, the previous holder of the title Leviathan. I mean, you make a much better Leviathan. Just looking at this woman gives me goosebumps. Naruto said, the last part spoken in a low voice. Serafall, having heard, laughed a little before her eyes hardened again. Kateria-sama, one of the colored exorcists said. Silence! You're so useless that you couldn't even cause a small amount of damage. Useless. I'll be sure to give you all the proper discipline when this is over, she told them darkly, with a small smile on her face. Her smile returned as she looked at Serafall and Naruto. Serafall Leviathan, she began with a mocking smile. It's been a long time, hasn't it? I can still remember very well how you stole the title of Leviathan from me. Today, I plan to reclaim that title by killing you. She looked in Naruto's direction and gave him an appraising look. I might even take your lover for myself as well, she sneered. Naruto gave a blank stare, his expression seemingly neutral. A small hint of anger and disgust passed through his eyes, but those were the only emotions that came through. Serafall was a completely different story. Her head tilted down, her bangs eclipsing her eyes and blocking them from view. A deep frown adorned her face, and her grip on her staff tightened to the point where small cracks formed. The ice around her crackled and grew colder, as evidenced by the way it turned whiter, and the cold mist grew larger. Oh, did I hit a nerve? Kateria smiled. Serafall slowly tilted her head upward, and when Kateria saw her face, she flinched. Serafall's neutral expression was gone, replaced by a face of nothing but pure anger, rage, and hatred. On the rooftop, everyone else trembled at her gaze, as they had never seen Serafall like this. When Serafall spoke, it made everyone shiver at the sheer cold rage in her tone. I don't care if you want to reclaim your title of Leviathan, but no one is threatening to take me away, Narutan. Despite saying it in a low voice, everyone heard her clearly, and they all felt a drop of cold sweat trickle down their foreheads. Die, Serafall whispered. Kateria reacted on instinct. She leaped back, the ground in front of her instantly crumbling as razor-sharp ice glaciers took its place. The glaciers would have turned her into a disfigured dango if she hadn't jumped back. Kateria ducked her head, just in time as a pink staff was about to snap her neck and possibly collapse on her skull. For Kateria, everything was in slow motion as she stared into Serafall's eyes. His purple eyes expressed nothing but cold rage, a mocking smile on his lips as he gave Kateria his full attention. It was at that moment that two thoughts passed through Kateria's mind. The first was, maybe I shouldn't have pissed Serafall off. And her second was, I screwed up big time, didn't I? Before any other thought could cross Kateria's mind, she spat out a drop of blood. The reason was because Serafall had buried her knee in Kateria's gut, the sheer force enough to turn a boulder into nothing but paste. Before Kateria could even hope to recover, Serafall's wings sprouted from her back, slapping Kateria across the face. Kateria was sent flying to the ground, her face slithering across the floor as she slowly came to a stop. When he stopped, Kateria groaned as she collected herself. She held her face as her healing factor kicked in, healing her bruised stomach and the wounds on her face. She let go of his face and growled as the last of his wounds healed. Serafall! Bitch! She screamed in rage. However she screamed in pain, she was as Naruto appeared in front of her, the blonde burying a Rasengan into her torso. Kateria could only scream in agony as the Rasengan ripped into her flesh. She looked into Naruto's angry eyes and wondered what she did to anger him. No one calls Sarachan a bitch. Naruto spoke angrily. A moment later, Kateria was launched from her position, spinning erratically as the Rasengan remained buried in her torso. As it spun, Kateria could only scream in pain, but she was saved from her painful adventure and thrust into a new one. A large boulder of ice slammed her into the ground, shards of ice burying themselves in her body. When all the rubble was cleared, Kateria lay on the ground, gasping and moaning in pain as her wounds slowly healed. Hearing footsteps, she looked up and gulped as Serafall stared at her with cold eyes, Naruto joining her cold gaze. Serafall raised her staff, preparing to finish Kateria off, but was surprised when Vali appeared beside Kateria, the wielder of divine dividing, helping the ancient Leviathan to its feet. On the rooftop, everyone's eyes widened in shock at Vala's actions, while Azazel narrowed his eyes. I see, so that's how it is, Vala, the fallen angel leader thought. Back below, Serafall narrowed her eyes menacingly, and given the amount of coldness in her purple orbs, it was quite intimidating. Traitor! She growled lowly. I knew I was right in my initial assumption about you, Naruto said coldly, frowning. Vala seemed to want to say something, but couldn't as Kateria spoke. Vala, fine, with you this fight will be much easier. Your divine dividing coupled with our master's gift will make us win this farce. She hissed through gritted teeth, her hand reaching into her clothes and pulling out a jar containing 2 black snakes. Naruto's eyes narrowed, recalling several bad experiences he'd had with snakes. Why was it that almost everything that had to do with snakes always ended up being a major problem? Naruto swore she gained some sort of power from those things that was going to start sending curses Orochimaru's way. Kateria opened the jar as Vala activated his scary gear, and Kateria smiled as she allowed the 2 snakes to burrow into her skin. Instantly, her wounds healed, and she smiled as she felt her powers triple. Yes, yes! She shouted as she unleashed the full power of her might. This is what a true ultimate class devil is capable of! She shouted happily. A single thought flashed through Naruto's mind. Orochimaru, you son of a bitch! Even now you're causing me trouble! Naruto could imagine Orochimaru smirking in amusement. Smug bastard. He looked at Serafall, noticing the light bead of sweat that formed due to Kateria's power. Frowning, Naruto gauged Kateria's power. She was definitely stronger than Kokubile as of now. But she wasn't even close to what he could do. Frowning, Naruto decided he wanted to end this quickly, and he could only think of one way to do it really. That, and he wanted to test how much power divine dividing can divide. Sarah-chan. He spoke, catching Serafall's attention. He offered his hand and gave her a warm, loving smile. Smiling back, Serafall placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining as they held hands. Kateria laughed. What's this? Sharing one last moment together before dying? Beside her, Vala narrowed his eyes. No, they were planning something. Naruto didn't respond, instead his form became engulfed in pure energy. His clothes became like a second skin as a yellow flame energy reached him, his eyes changing from blue to crimson red as a slit was in the place of his pupils. His whisker marks grow into large black bars. His bangs shoot out, resembling horns. His body was now covered in black tribal markings, and a yellow coat made from the energy that wrapped around him now adorned him. The back of the coat also has tribal markings. Serafall underwent a different transformation. Instead of the same transformation Naruto went through, a golden cloak of pure energy enveloped her. She took the form of a fox, 2 energy tails forming behind her as the energy developed into her ears. The golden energy felt like a second skin, and transparent tribal markings adorned the energy cloak around her. Aside from the energy cloak, she didn't undergo any major changes. Everyone could only stare at the 2 in awe, the absolute power they all felt rolling in waves. It was hard to believe any being could radiate the amount of power they were emitting, yet it was happening before them. So much power! I don't think I can divide that much. Despite those thoughts, Vala was grinning madly, anticipation welling up in him at the thought of fighting such a powerful being. Seemingly sensing Vala's anticipation, Naruto narrowed his eyes and frowned slightly. Narutan! I feel like I'm about to start flying! Serafall happily exclaimed. Naruto smiled slightly. I haven't graced this mode in a long time. Ready to try out your new power boost, Sarah-chan? Serafall happily nodded. Yes. Yes. Leviathan wants to know her new limits, so let's see what we're capable of now. Kateria and Vala blinked. One moment, the power couple was several feet away from them. The next, the 2 were right in front of them. It was only instinct that allowed Vala to dodge the fist that meant to slam into his face. However, he wasn't so lucky the next, as a knee buried itself in his torso. Kateria wasn't as lucky as Vala had been the first time. She couldn't dodge, nor could she deflect the fist that Serafall slammed into her face. She also couldn't react when Serafall leaped up behind her, pulling at her hair as she did so, and threw her onto the field. Kateria screamed as her face slid across the hard ground, blood and grime mixing and leaving a trail. Her slithering motion stopped as Serafall descended, a large hammer made entirely of ice in her hands. The raven-haired beauty slammed the hammer down on Kateria, burying the ancient Leviathan into the ground as flecks of ice and dirt flew everywhere. Of course, Kateria should have been unconscious or dead. However, Serafall felt she should show no mercy and should make sure Kateria was dead. Serafall raised her hands, and ice began to swirl around her. Finally, after several moments, a massive ice spear loomed over her. The spear was large enough that she could be seen from about 5 kilometers away. Serafall frowned at the chasm she created. She quickly sent out a pulse of magic to determine if Kateria was still alive. She sensed the ancient Leviathan's life force. It was weak, much more so. It was all Serafall needed to know that she was either unconscious or on the verge of death. Serafall was faced with 2 choices. Finish off the ancient Leviathan or let her die slowly. Serafall had already made her choice, even before she'd considered any other option. Besides, that bastard tried to take her Narutan. With a surprisingly bloodthirsty smile, Serafall lowered her hands, the ice spear following soon after. A miniature earthquake erupted, and dust and debris scattered through the air and across the ground. Everyone watching the fight had to shield their eyes as dust particles, ice shards, and concrete threatened to make a home in their eyes. Serafall maintained a neutral expression for a moment, and she extended her senses, searching for signs of life from Kateria. She couldn't find it. Serafall knew that meant 2 things. Either Kateria was dead, or she must have escaped. Serafall was confident that Kateria was dead. She felt a small pang of guilt, but quickly pushed it away. Kateria had spat in her face when she showed kindness decades ago. Worse, she threatened to take Narutan away from her. That little girl got what she deserved. Serafall couldn't think about the matter any further as Vala flew past her, crashing into a building, a bit of debris falling on him. Naruto stopped beside her, giving her a peck on the lips. "I'll be right back, sweetheart. Vala and I are still bonding." With that, Naruto proceeded to walk towards the pile of rubble. Serafall laughed a little, before looking at the hostile survivors surrounding her. "You all have 10 seconds to decide which is more important. Your lives or your ignorant attempts to defeat me and my fiancée," she said grimly. Within seconds, everyone backed off and retreated. Nodding in a satisfied manner, Serafall bowed her head as Naruto once again stopped beside her. A frown formed on his face as his golden aura flickered out. The ornate golden cloak Serafall adorned also disappeared. "Something wrong, Narutan?" she asked him. "Somehow Vali escaped. I'm not sure how, but one second I was waiting for him to emerge from the rubble, the next, his energy signature was completely gone." Naruto explained. "I can't sense him anywhere near here." Serafall frowned for a moment, but a big smile quickly graced her face as she leapt toward the blonde. Her legs wrapped around his waist, and her arms hooked around his neck. "Who cares? We won! That means we can finish the peace meeting. And the sooner we do it, the sooner we can all snuggle up in our beds," she happily exclaimed. Naruto smiled, absent-mindedly stroking Serafall's hair as he gazed into her eyes. "Yeah, that sounds great." The two kissed for several moments before breaking apart. Reluctantly, Serafall released her hold on him, but she adamantly refused to let go of his hand. Together, the powerful couple returned to the others. The others welcomed them back with looks of shock, awe, and a little bit of fear. However, that fear vanished in an instant upon seeing Serafall's childlike personality, and Naruto's usual easygoing attitude. However, that still changes one fact. Everyone was internally afraid of Serafall being angry, and the vast amount of power Naruto contained. The peace meeting continued, and the 3 factions agreed to an alliance. This alliance would last until the Chaos Brigade was dealt with a strong possibility that it would become permanent. The following months were peaceful. There were no sudden attacks, and the 3 factions quietly prepared for a confrontation with the Chaos Brigade. They often shared information and tactics to better work together. It was also a moment of surprise for many. Our favorite blonde was one who received a surprise like no other. "Please repeat that, Sarah-chan," Naruto murmured blankly, his voice soft and dazed. Serafall gazed at her love with glowing purple eyes. Care and love flooded her eyes as she looked down at him. Her hands gently caressed his stomach. I'm pregnant, Naruto. We're both going to be a mother and a father. Her voice was soft and loving, confident of his loving reaction to the news. She was right to be confident. A big smile spread across Naruto's face as he wrapped his arms around Serafall's small hands, caressing his stomach, and kissed her before holding his ear to hers. Serafall laughed. Naruto, the baby isn't going to kick yet. After all, I'm only a month old, I know. It's just that I'm so happy. Naruto replied. I'm going to be a father. This is wonderful. He looked up, staring into Serafall's eyes with so much love and adoration that it made Serafall want to melt. And I have you to thank for this, Sarah-chan. He gently pressed his forehead against Serafall's, pecking her lips. I love you, Sarah-chan. I'm so glad I met you. Serafall smiled, pressing her body against the blonde's as they maintained eye contact. I know, Naruto-chan. And I love you. They were about to share another kiss when they heard Lady Citri suddenly shriek down the hall. Did you hear that, honey? Finally, grandchildren, quick! Call Sona! She must hear the news. I must invite Lady Gremory and Lady Phoenix to the baby shower. It will be amazing. Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, it's safe to say your parents know. Serafall nodded happily. The next few months of pregnancy were interesting to say the least. Serafall had been the talk of the entire demon society. There wasn't a day that the demons weren't talking and gossiping about Serafall's pregnancy. There was also the baby shower that Lady Citri threw. The ordeal was interesting to say the least, with the eccentric characters that many attendees possessed. Sona was shocked to hear that her sister was pregnant and expected to be an aunt. She had initially fainted when she heard the news. In which she was given the news in the middle of class, Rias who heard it from Serzex. So it was safe to say that the entire school knew Sona was going to be an aunt. When Azazel heard, he silently muttered to himself that a mini Serafall was going to start wreaking havoc. He decided to have some contingency plans just in case. When Michael and Gabriel heard, suffice it to say, Gabriel had screamed, while Michael had simply blinked. He was actually shocked, to be honest. He had expected it to actually happen, but not so soon. He quickly followed Azazel's lead. There was no way he was going to let a little Serafall on crack get within a mile of heaven. The other angels felt relief well up in their chests. They didn't know why. Soon, the time had finally come. The day Serafall went into labor. Naruto paced nervously back and forth. His lips pursed, his hands folded neatly behind his back. Serzex slept in a chair not far away, while Ajuka read some notes on some experiments he was working on. Both Lord and Lady Citri drank cups of coffee. They didn't really taste any of it, but simply loved the taste. Sona sat across from Rias, a table between them. The two kings were playing chess, Sona winning since she had recently captured Rias's queen. The short-haired girl frowned when her queen was taken in return. A mistake on her part. One she wouldn't make again. Moving her rook, she muttered check, and waited for Rias's move. In response, Rias moved her pawn forward, preventing the rook from capturing her king. Frowning, Sona moved her bishop. Check. Rias frowned and reluctantly moved her king. Sona moved her knight and crossed her hands. Mate, she said. Blinking, Rias examined the board and frowned as she realized Sona's words were true. Well played. The red-haired girl muttered. Rematch? Wordlessly, Sona nodded, and the two set about resetting the board. They were denied another game when the door opened and the doctor walked out. Instantly, all eyes focused on the doctor, which made him feel uneasy. Nonetheless, he smiled at Naruto. Mr. Uzumaki. Congratulations, your wife has given birth to healthy triplets. Triplets? Sona muttered in disbelief. Lord and Lady Citri smiled excitedly. Rias shared Sona's reaction. Ajuka dropped her notes, while waiting for Serzex's reaction. The red-haired mouse snored. Naruto's eyes widened at the news, before a wide smile spread across his features. He rushed into the room, his heart warming at the sight of Serafall lovingly cradling 3 babies. Naruto slowly approached, Serafall's eyes focusing on his approaching form. She smiled, gesturing for Naruto to hold one of them. He took one, noting it was a girl. In fact, 2 were girls, while the last was a boy. Have you named them yet? He murmured, gently cradling his daughter in his arms. Serafall nodded happily. This one, she began, pointing to the girl on her left arm. Like Serafall, her daughter possessed black hair. It's Sararise, Sararise, Naruto murmured. Named after you, no doubt. He smiled. Serafall nodded. Yes, while autumn is in my name, the increase is in hers. Naruto gestured to the boy in his right arm, who possessed the same blonde hair he was holding. What about his name? Serafall smiled softly. This one was born a few seconds before Sararise. She murmured lovingly. Burrito. Named after you? Naruto smiled, and finally, gestured to the daughter he held in his arms, who possessed blonde hair, streaked with black highlights. What about our daughter here? Serafall's eyes expressed deep love for the 3 children, and Naruto knew her eyes expressed the same. She was born first. Our beautiful little Tsurara. Smiling, Naruto leaned forward, pressing his lips against Serafall's, and then his children's foreheads. All wonderful names, he murmured. The family ignores the shriek, which undoubtedly came from Lady Sidri, who entered the room. To them, nothing else mattered or existed. There were no demons, angels, or fallen. The entire experience with the Chaos Brigade was the last thing on their minds, as the outside world didn't exist for them. The only world that existed at this moment was the small room they were in. The one that housed them and their 3 children.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.